Chapter 38:59. Brother, I've implicated you. I'm sorry. Old Fang kept apologizing as they walked out of the market. Earlier in the restaurant, Yang Kai and Fang Tai didn't see eye to eye and parted on bad terms. Although Old Fang wasn't paying attention, he still noticed it. Yang Kai laughed. You're thinking too much. That guy clearly wants to distance himself from me. Even if today's incident didn't happen, he would have found another reason. But then again, he didn't have much of a relationship with Fang Tai. They just drank a pot of tea together in the market last month and then verbally agreed to form an alliance. Yang Kai didn't really care about this kind of unreliable alliance. Fang Tai took the opportunity to make things difficult for him today because he wanted to draw a clear line between them. He probably wasn't afraid of being implicated. They didn't have much of a relationship, so even if something happened to Yang Kai, he wouldn't be implicated. But since they had agreed to form an alliance, if he didn't do anything when something happened to Yang Kai, it wouldn't be justifiable. Now that they had parted ways, Yang Kai's life and death had nothing to do with him. Are you close? Why does he want to distance himself from you? Old Fang didn't understand. Yang Kai shook his head. We're not that close. He didn't want to talk about the alliance. He turned his head and said, but you, how are you going to solve today's incident? If you don't handle it well, I'm afraid it'll be troublesome. Old Fang said with a bitter face, I don't know. Yang Kai sighed. Prepare to spend a lot of money. That Zhu Zheng seems to be a greedy person. If you can be ruthless and give him more benefits, it should be fine. I hope so. It's not bad if I can spend money to avoid trouble. Brother, do you want to come with me? Today, he saw you with me. If I go alone, I'm afraid he'll have a worse impression of you. That's true. Kai Yang rubbed his chin. How about this, when you go later, count me in as well, I won't be going. It's not good for too many people to go, so I'll have to trouble you to be the representative. Old Fang thought about it and felt that Yang Kai's words made sense. After all, giving a gift was not something that could be seen in public. It was better for him to go alone than with two people, so he immediately nodded and agreed. He wasn't afraid that Yang Kai would go back on his word. After all, with his monthly income, Yang Kai wouldn't go back on his word. They didn't speak the entire way back to the handyman quarters. Yang Kai wasn't in the mood to wander around after the celebration. He spent the rest of his rest time in his room. 2 days later, General Sai Chen entered the orchard and patrolled his territory as usual. 30 fruit trees didn't take much effort. However, Yang Kai soon stopped in front of a fruit tree and frowned. He didn't know if it was an illusion, but he felt that there was something wrong with this fire spirit fruit tree. After carefully comparing it with the other fruit trees, he found that there was indeed something wrong. The leaves on this fruit tree and the color of the fire spirit fruit tree were redder than 3 days ago, as if they were about to be ripe. He didn't know what was going on, so he quickly went to ask Old Fang. When Old Fang saw him, he smiled and said, Brother, you're here? Yang Kai looked at his expression and smiled. Is it done? If it wasn't done, Old Fang wouldn't be so calm. As expected, Old Fang nodded. It's done. It's just that it cost a lot. How much? Yang Kai asked. Old Fang gestured and said with heartache, 100 heaven-opening pills. That's a few dozen years of my income. This time, he had really lost a lot. That was in the past. Yang Kai looked at him with a smile. How much do you get in a month now? What's there to feel heartache about? You said it yourself, we're spending money to avoid disasters. Yes. Old Fang nodded. Oh right, I also sent 30 pills to you. Steward Chow kindly accepted them and said that you're very sensible. I think you'll be able to get rid of that piece of land soon. All right, I'll give you more from the account later. Yang Kai frowned. Speaking of that piece of land, come with me to take a look. Old Fang saw his serious expression and hurriedly put down what he was doing and followed Yang Kai to the fruit tree. His expression changed and he exclaimed, Not good. What's wrong? Old Fang said. The 3 dead fruit trees also showed this change. The color of the leaves and fruits became darker. Once this happens, the fruit trees will die in less than a month. Yang Kai was stunned. Are you sure? Old Fang was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. My orchard is nearby. Do you think I don't know what happened here? This is an imminent calamity, an imminent calamity. Then what should we do? Old Fang walked in circles, racking his brains. After a while, he stopped and said, "The only person who can help you now is Steward Chow. Fortunately, I sent some pills to him before, so he probably won't do anything. Go to the center of the orchard. There's a pavilion there. Steward Chow is usually there. Go find him and explain the situation. No need to look for him." Yang Kai suddenly turned his head and looked in a certain direction. In the sky, a figure was flying quickly towards them. Who else could it be but Zhu Zheng? It looked like he was heading straight for them. Perhaps it was because of Old Fang's generous gift. Otherwise, he wouldn't come here unless he was patrolling the orchard. After a short while, Zhu Zheng landed in front of them. Yang Kai and Old Fang hurriedly bowed. Zhu Zheng clasped his hands behind his back and nodded slightly. "You two are quite close. You're always together wherever you go." He smiled, as if he wasn't the one who splashed wine on Old Fang's face a few days ago. Old Fang nodded and bowed. "Brother Yang, you're new here and live next door to me. Of course, I have to take care of you." Zhu Zheng nodded. "That's right. If everyone here was like you, I wouldn't have to run around so tiring. I really want to rest early." Old Fang hurriedly said, "This orchard can't do without Steward Chow. The more capable one is, the more responsibility one has. I can only do my best to share the burden of the master." Zhu Zheng laughed and pointed at Old Fang. "You're the only one who knows how to talk." Old Fang smiled. "By the way, Steward Chow, I have something to report to you." "Yes, what is it?" "It's like this. Yang Kai has been in the chores room for more than 2 months now. I've personally taught him. I've seen that he learns quickly and does well. He's already capable of taking care of more fruit trees. We don't have many people in the chores room to begin with, so it's a bit of a waste to let him take care of only 30 fruit trees. Steward Chow, do you think you can transfer him to another place? Otherwise, this kid will come and bother me all day long. I'm really annoyed." As he spoke, he gave Yang Kai a meaningful look. Yang Kai hurriedly said, "Steward Chow, I'm already mentally prepared to contribute more to the land of fire spirits." Zhu Zheng nodded. "Well, it's rare for you to have such intentions. Since that's the case, I'll fulfill your wish. To tell you the truth, this is also the reason why I'm here today." Old Fang was overjoyed when he heard this. He turned his head and looked at Yang Kai. They both knew that the gift they had given before was effective. Moreover, it was more than effective. It was simply immediate. "Thank you, Steward Chow." Yang Kai cupped his hands. Zhu Zheng smiled and was about to say something when his eyes suddenly fixed on the problematic fruit tree. He carefully looked at it for a while and his expression changed. He said in a deep voice, "I suddenly remembered that I still have something important to do. I'll come back later." He was about to leave. How could Old Fang let him leave? He grabbed his arm and begged, Steward Chow, please wait. Can you transfer Yang Kai to another place first?" Zhu Zheng flicked his sleeves and said unhappily, "I'm responsible for patrolling and managing the fire spirit orchard. This is a very important matter. Any carelessness can lead to endless disasters. Now that I have something important to do, why are you pulling me? If something goes wrong, can you bear the responsibility?" Old Fang smiled apologetically. "There's no need to rush. Transferring Yang Kai away is just a matter of a word from you, Master Steward." Zhu Zheng looked at him coldly. "It's easy to transfer him away, but after he leaves, who will take care of the 30 fruit trees in this orchard? I haven't found a replacement yet. Why don't you take care of them for a while?" Old Fang was stunned. How could he dare to agree? He subconsciously loosened his grip and Zhu Zheng immediately flew away. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared without a trace. "This is bad, this is bad." Old Fang slapped his thigh in annoyance. "This is bad." Seeing Zhu Zheng's reaction, it was obvious that he also found out that there was a problem with the fruit trees. Before, he said that he was here to transfer Yang Kai away, but after seeing that there was a problem with the fruit trees, he immediately changed his mind. Obviously, he didn't want to take any responsibility and only wanted Yang Kai to take care of it. This was tantamount to pushing Yang Kai into a fire pit. Old Fang had just eaten a bite of meat with Yang Kai and was enjoying the beautiful future. If something happened to Yang Kai, then he couldn't count on anyone. So no matter what, he couldn't let anything happen to Yang Kai. But now that Zhu Zhang had left, he was like a headless fly without any ideas. Why aren't you worried at all? Old Fang suddenly saw Yang Kai's indifferent expression and couldn't help but be surprised. What's the use of worrying? Old Fang was stunned and knew that he was right. The most important thing now was the fruit trees, and worrying wouldn't solve the problem. However, when he remembered that he had given Zhu Zheng such a big gift the day before yesterday, but today he didn't help, he couldn't help but be angry. He spat in the direction Zhu Zheng had left and cursed, "That guy is simply an ungrateful wretch." More than 100 heaven opening pills were fed to the dogs. If he hadn't offended Zhu Zheng so badly a few days ago, how could he be willing to give so many heaven opening pills? He thought that he could exchange for a future, but in the blink of an eye, he was forced into a dead end. Let's check first. Yang Kai didn't panic. I've checked several times before, but I didn't find anything. But now that there is a problem with the fruit trees, maybe we can find some clues. Old Fang nodded and said, yes, let's check together. No matter what, we have to find the problem first and then find the right medicine. Chapter 3860. The two of them immediately busied themselves around the fruit tree. Old Fang didn't even hesitate to use a secret technique. As his strength fluctuated, a white light floated out from his fingertip. Under his control, the light moved inch by inch to every corner of the fruit tree. After working for 1 to 2 hours, they still didn't find any problems. Old Fang was so anxious that his forehead was covered in sweat. He kept muttering, "It can't be, why can't I find anything? Brother, could it be that something went wrong when you were taking care of this tree?" Kai Yang stood to the side with his arms crossed, with Sai Chen Supreme General on top of his head. Hearing this, he shook his head and said, "That's impossible. If there really was a problem with my daily care, it wouldn't be just this one fruit tree, but all 30 of my fruit trees." That's true. Old Fang also felt that his guess was nonsense. Although Yang Kai had only been here for a short time, he had already learned how to take care of fruit trees. Moreover, even if there was a problem with Yang Kai, could it be that there was also a problem with the previous 3 owners? Since there is no problem with the fruit trees, then the problem must be with this piece of land. Old Fang frowned. Thinking of this, he said, "Don't be discouraged. Keep looking, we have to find something." After another round of work, the two of them almost flipped over the piece of land. If it wasn't for the fact that they were worried about damaging the fruit trees, they really would have done this. But no matter what, they couldn't find the problem. Old Fang was under a mountain of pressure. He kept muttering to himself, as if it wasn't Yang Kai who was in trouble, but him. Someone came to find Old Fang to sell him blue flame silkworms, but Old Fang wasn't in the mood to receive them. Something big was about to happen to Yang Kai. Without Yang Kai, no matter how many blue flame silkworms he collected, he wouldn't be able to turn them into heaven-opening pills. "Old Fang, you go do what you need to do. Let me think by myself." Yang Kai also couldn't stand his chatter and took this chance to send him away. Old Fang nodded, but before he left, he comforted Yang Kai, "Don't worry, we'll find a way when we get there. I'll call Sister Dai Yu over, I don't believe we won't be able to find her." He led the person who came to his fruit garden. Once Old Fang left, his ears became much quieter. Yang Kai stared at the fruit tree that had a problem. He carefully recalled everything he had done over the past 2 months to make sure he hadn't overlooked anything. Turning his head and looking around to make sure there was no one around, Yang Kai stretched out his palm and placed it on the trunk of the fruit tree, quietly activating his wood attribute Dao Seal. Ever since Dai Yu reminded him last time, he had been using his wood elemental energy to nourish the fruit trees. Of course, the 3 saplings were not included. He was mainly worried that they would grow too quickly and arouse suspicion. With the nourishment of his wood elemental energy, the rest of the fruit trees grew very well. Now that there was a problem with one of them, he wanted to see if his wood elemental energy could solve it. After all, It was the wood elemental energy condensed from the essence of the immortal tree. Although it couldn't bring the dead back to life, it should have some effect, right? At least. That was what he planned to do. When Yang Kai poured his wood attribute force into the fruit tree in front of him, the fruit tree really did take a turn for the better. The leaves and spirit fruit's color seemed to fade a little, but at the same time, Yang Kai also made another discovery. From underground, a scorching hot force surged out uncontrollably and rushed into the fruit tree in front of him. The scorching hot force spread out and the fruit tree, which had just taken a turn for the better, was restored to its original state. Yang Kai raised his brow, looking surprised. He knew that the scorching hot force surging out from underground was fire attribute force. This entire fruit garden was located on a huge fire spirit land. While tending to the fruit tree, Yang Kai had also used the token in his hand to draw in the fire attribute force from underground to nourish the fire spirit fruit tree, but he had to control the intensity of the fire attribute force well. Normally, if he didn't use the token to activate the barrier, it was impossible for the fire attribute force to surge out on its own. But in fact, a scorching hot force had appeared just now, and it wasn't drawn by him. Yang Kai was shocked and vaguely felt that he seemed to have found the source, but he couldn't figure out why. He carefully tried a few more times and found that every time he poured his wood attribute force into the fruit tree, a burst of fire attribute force would surge out from underground. Moreover, this burst of fire attribute force was much hotter and denser than the one he usually drew out. Although the fire spirit fruit tree needed this kind of force, it was always better to go too far. If he absorbed too much of this force, it would obviously be a burden to the fruit tree. He hadn't found it before because every time Yang Kai urged his wood attribute force, he didn't touch the fruit tree. This time, in order to investigate the cause, he directly touched the fruit tree and felt it particularly clearly. What did you find? After Old Fang finished his business, he came over to investigate again. Seeing Yang Kai frowning and pondering, he quickly asked. Yang Kai rubbed his chin and said, I can't say. Right, have you condensed wood attribute force? Old Fang nodded. As long as the conditions are right, the odd job workers in the fire spirit lands will prioritize condensing wood attribute force. Because wood nurtured fire, it was extremely beneficial for taking care of the fruit tree. Try urging your wood attribute force to nourish this fruit tree. Yang Kai pointed to the front. Old Fang didn't ask any more questions and immediately started to do it. But after a while, he frowned and said, What's wrong? Is there anything special? You didn't feel anything? Yang Kai didn't understand. What did you feel? Old Fang stared at him. Seeing that he really didn't feel anything, Yang Kai asked him to try again. This time, he placed his hand on the fruit tree and found that after Old Fang urged his wood attribute force, nothing unusual happened. This was strange. Yang Kai asked him to stop and urged his own wood attribute force. Old Fang's eyebrows twitched. This power. This time, he finally felt it. Suddenly, his expression changed, and his expression became extremely strange. He said in a trembling voice, Brother, try a few more times. Yang Kai didn't know why he was so excited, but it was obvious that he had discovered something and tried a few more times. After a long time, Old Fang waved his hand, indicating that Yang Kai could stop. After thinking for a long time, he suddenly raised his hand and slapped himself. Yang Kai was startled. What are you doing? Old Fang looked at him with burning eyes. Why didn't I think of it? I should have thought of it a long time ago. It's a blessing, not a curse. It's a blessing, not a curse. Those two originally cloudy eyes were now shining with an astonishing light. Yang Kai frowned. What is a blessing, not a curse? Explain it clearly. Old Fang said with an envious expression. Brother, your luck really is heaven-defying. Yang Kai snorted. The one with heaven-defying luck is Fang Tai. In the 2 months he's been here, he's made 2 contributions. What's the big deal about his luck? Although this old master doesn't know what kind of contribution he made, compared to you, it's definitely a small wizard meeting a great wizard. Old Fang rubbed his hands excitedly. What are you trying to say? Yang Kai was confused. Old Fang said, the entire orchard is built on top of a huge fire spirit land. You should know that, right? The fire element energy contained in this fire spirit land is precisely the nutrients that the fruit trees need. If we use the 9 grades of heaven opening to divide, then the fire element energy here can be divided into 1 grade. In other words, we can use the energy here to condense our own fire element energy, and we don't need to spend money to buy it. However, the grade of this energy is too low, so few people would do so. Steward Chow accidentally absorbed the fire attribute energy here and was forced to condense the first grade heaven splitting. However, there are exceptions to everything. In the fire elemental energy of the first grade, it is possible to produce materials of a higher grade. Yang Kai nodded. Zhong Ruo she had also told him about this before. It was said that the Golden Spirit Blessed Land, one of the 72 blessed lands, had a kind of sharp metal yuan demon. This sharp metal yuan demon was a 5th grade material, and as long as one paid the right price, anyone could enter it to condense metal attribute energy. Inside the sharp metal yuan demon, it was possible to give birth to 7th grade demon essence. By the same token, 1st grade fire attribute energy could naturally give birth to higher grade materials. However, Zhu Zheng had been forced to reach the first stage heaven splitter because he had accidentally absorbed the fire elemental energy here. I remember that 300 years ago, in this orchard, a ball of scarlet sky true flame appeared in the territory managed by a guy. At that time, many people from the Chichiao lands came and spent a lot of effort to take away the scarlet sky true flame. And that scarlet sky true flame is a 3rd grade material. Yang Kai was stunned. You mean, I also have scarlet sky true flame here? That's right, Old Fang said excitedly. When the disciples of the 7 Openings land collected scarlet sky true flame, many odd-job workers ran over to watch the fun. This old man also went over. Although there was a barrier at the time and I couldn't see clearly, after the barrier was lifted, I felt a slightly different kind of fire attribute energy. It was exactly the same as what I felt just now. Really? Yang Kai squinted at him. Don't lie to me. Is there such a good thing? Why would I lie to you? Old Fang smiled. Little brother, you're so lucky. Just randomly assigned a piece of land and you actually have scarlet sky true flame. Now you don't have to be afraid. Good luck, good luck. It's really enviable. Even if there really is scarlet sky true flame, it belongs to the 7 Openings land. It has nothing to do with me. Old Fang said, how can it have nothing to do with you? If you didn't find scarlet sky true flame, they wouldn't have found it. Moreover, a 3rd grade material is worth more than 15,000 heaven-splitting pills. Even in the 7 Openings land, it's a treasure sought after by the disciples of the 7 Openings land. When we get back to the 7 Openings land, we'll definitely reward little brother. However, with your current wealth, I'm afraid you won't be interested in that. Yang Kai rolled his eyes. Since it's a 3rd grade material, what do you think if I give it to? Chapter 3861. Grade 3 materials were extremely valuable, so Yang Kai naturally didn't want to miss this opportunity. Absolutely not. Old Fang turned pale with fright. He realized that Yang Kai was truly ignorant and fearless, daring to say anything and having any ideas. He looked around to make sure there was no one around before lowering his voice and saying, don't even think about it. Brother, you have a great way to make money now, so don't ruin your future for such a small profit. After all, this is something from the Chichiao land. It's fine if it doesn't get exposed, but if it does. He reached out and touched his neck. What he said made sense. Now that they were in the Chichiao land, even if they really did get the Scarlet Heaven True Flame, there was no place to sell it. Yang Kai also didn't care about grade 3 materials, so there was no way he could absorb it himself. After weighing the benefits and risks, Yang Kai also dispelled the idea and nodded. Then I'll report this matter. Go quickly, what are you waiting for? I believe that once Steward Chow knows about this, he will immediately come to investigate, Old Fang urged. After investigating the root cause, he felt as if a huge rock had been lifted from his heart. Yang Kai readily accepted the advice and immediately went to the center of the orchard to find Zhu Zheng. If possible, he didn't want to let Zhu Zheng off so easily. This guy had just received more than 100 heaven opening pills from him and Old Fang, and now he was leaving them in the lurch. What a snobbish guy. Unfortunately, as an odd job worker, He couldn't leave the orchard without permission, let alone report it to someone else. He could only go find Zhu Zheng. After Yang Kai left, Old Fang suddenly thought of a problem. Why didn't the previous owners notice anything when they came here, but Yang Kai discovered it so quickly? Also, why didn't the Scarlet Heaven True Flame react when he used his wood elemental energy, but it reacted when Yang Kai used his wood elemental energy? He couldn't figure it out. Not long after, two figures arrived and landed in front of Yang Kai. It was Zhu Zheng and Yang Kai. Old Fang stepped forward and bowed. Zhu Zheng asked suspiciously. Yang Kai reported that there were traces of the Kai Xiao True Flame's aura here. Is that true? It's true, it's true. This old man can't be wrong. That's definitely the aura of Kai Xiao Zhenyang. If Master doesn't believe me, you can let Yang Kai test it. Zhu Zheng turned his head to look at Yang Kai. Yang Kai walked up to the fruit tree without saying a word and reached out to cover it, activating the power of the wood element. In the next moment, Zhu Zheng raised his eyebrows and revealed a joyful expression. It really is the Red Cloud True Flame. He hadn't even approached the fruit tree, but he had already sensed it. It seemed that the heaven-opening realm really was the heaven-opening realm. Even if he was only at the first rank, he still had his own unique advantages. After muttering to himself for a moment, he revealed a look of understanding. So that's how it is. He raised his head and ordered, "You two stay here. I'll be right back." After he finished speaking, he soared into the sky. Old Fang watched him leave, then turned to Yang Kai with a smile and said, "Brother, congratulations." Yang Kai was disinterested. "What's there to congratulate? We don't have a share in this Kai Xiao Zhenyang." "You can't say that. Although we don't have a share in this third-rank material, since Steward Chow confirmed it, it can be considered as solving a big problem. Naturally, we should be happy." He lowered his voice and said, "Moreover, the third-rank material is at most 15,000 heaven-opening pills. With Brother's current ability, are you afraid you won't be able to earn enough?" Yang Kai knew that what he said was reasonable, but he still felt a little uncomfortable in his heart. His situation could be considered good. After coming out of the star boundary, he had adjusted his mentality quite well. There were some people who jumped out of their own universe worlds and couldn't adjust their mentality for a while. They still used their previous attitude of supremacy to face the people here. Who knows how many times they would have died already. In less than half an hour, Zhu Zheng led a large group of disciples from the Seven Openings land. From this, it could be seen that this Kai Xiao Zhenyang was very important to the Seven Openings land. Otherwise, they wouldn't be so efficient. Yang Kai also recognized the leader. It was the Fire Spirit Land's managing disciple, Du Rufeng. Zhu Zheng, who was usually arrogant in front of the servants, was now nodding and bowing in front of him. Du Rufeng led the way in front, looking straight ahead. Behind him, many of the Seven Openings land's disciples also ignored Zhu Zheng. When they landed in the orchard, Zhu Zheng waved at Yang Kai and Old Fang. "You can leave. There's nothing for you to do here." When the two heard this, how could they stay? Although Yang Kai was curious about how they were going to collect the Kai Xiao Zhenyang, he couldn't do anything about it. He followed Old Fang back to his orchard and sat on the stone bench in front of the thatched cottage. Old Fang took out wine and filled their cups. As they drank and chatted, Yang Kai looked up at his orchard from time to time. Old Fang smiled and said, "Brother, don't look. They'll set up a barrier later. You won't be able to see anything. We don't need to worry about things over there. Come, drink with me." Yang Kai was absent-minded. However, he soon found that it was just as Old Fang said. His orchard was quickly covered with layers of barriers. Sure enough, he couldn't see anything. Now, he didn't need to observe anything and simply drank with Old Fang. After drinking a few cups, he suddenly sensed something and turned his head. He saw a figure hurriedly flying over. It was Zhu Zheng. However, at this moment, Zhu Zheng was sweating profusely and his complexion wasn't good. It was unknown what had happened, but he called out from afar, "Yang Kai, come here." Yang Kai and Old Fang looked at each other and both of them were puzzled. They got up and greeted him, cupping their fists and saying, "Steward Chow, what can I do for you?" Zhu Zheng lowered his voice and said, How did you trigger the Kai Xiaozhen Yang? This question was inexplicable. Yang Kai said, just trigger the power of the wood element. Bullshit. Zhu Zheng gritted his teeth and cursed, if it was so simple, why would this king need to come to you? Yang Kai was surprised, Master Steward, you can't trigger the Kai Xiaozhen Yang? He suddenly remembered that when Old Fang triggered the power of the wood element, there was no reaction. However, when he tried, the Kai Xiaozhen Yang immediately reacted. Zhu Zheng said, not only this king, but also Brother Du and the others can't do anything. Could it be that the method is wrong? What kind of method is needed to trigger the power of the wood element? Zhu Zheng said with a sullen face, come with me and perform well. If you can help Brother Du and the others get the Kai Xiaozhen Yang, you will be rewarded. He walked a few steps forward and stopped. He turned around and said, if Brother Du and the others ask, just say that this king was the one who found the Kai Xiaozhen Yang. Do you understand? Is he trying to steal the credit from me? Yang Kai was speechless. However, when he thought about what Old Fang said, Zhu Zheng would definitely fight for it. If it wasn't for the fact that they couldn't trigger the Kai Xiaozhen Yang, Yang Kai wouldn't have anything to do with it. He sneered. He sneered in his heart. Zhu Zheng was truly insatiable. After getting Yang Kai's confirmation, Zhu Zheng patted him on the shoulder and said, don't worry. If the Venerable One gives you a reward, you will also get it. When the time comes, this king will also arrange an orchard for you so that you won't be wasting your talents. Then I'll thank Steward Chow in advance. Yang Kai casually replied. After returning to his orchard with Zhu Zheng and entering the restriction, Yang Kai saw that the Chiqiaolan's disciples had set up some kind of formation. They surrounded the place where the fruit tree was and formed seals with their hands. Du Rufeng had his hands behind his back and was riding the wind. He looked very elegant. Zhu Zheng stepped forward and said, Brother Du, I've brought him. Du Rufeng looked at Yang Kai and said, you're new here? Yang Kai cupped his hands and said, greetings, Master Du. I've only been in the Fire Spirit Land for less than 3 months. Du Rufeng nodded slightly. Zhu Zheng said that you can trigger the Scarlet Heaven True Flame? That's right. You do it. Du Rufeng pointed at the fruit tree without saying anything else. Yang Kai did not waste time. He stepped forward to the fruit tree and placed his palm on the trunk. He channeled his wood elemental energy into it. In the next moment, a scorching heat gushed out from the ground. Du Rufeng raised his eyebrows. Zhu Zheng also looked happy. He looked at Du Rufeng and said, Brother Du. Du Rufeng nodded and said, continue. Hearing this, Yang Kai had no choice but to continue channeling his wood elemental energy into the fruit tree. At the same time, Du Rufeng signaled around with his eyes. The disciples of the 7 realms who were arranging the array immediately changed their hand seals. A faint light flickered under their feet. At the same time, a gentle stream of water elemental energy was channeled into the ground. Yang Kai suddenly understood that water elemental energy was the bane of fire. Were they trying to use water elemental energy to force the Scarlet Heaven True Flame out? This was also a good idea. It seemed like the disciples that Du Rufeng had brought with him were all carefully selected. They had come especially for the Scarlet Heaven True Flame. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been so well prepared. The whole process could be said to be boring. There was no earth-shattering movement. There were only different kinds of energy fluctuations in this small orchard. However, as time passed, Yang Kai could clearly feel that the Scarlet Heaven True Flame was being forced out little by little. The condition of the fruit tree in front of him was getting worse and worse. The leaves and fruits were gradually emitting a burnt smell. Du Rufeng did not speak, so Yang Kai did not dare to stop. He continued to channel his wood elemental energy. Half a day later, the fruit tree in front of Yang Kai suddenly burst into flames, turning into a huge ball of flames. The scorching energy rushed towards him, forcing Yang Kai to retreat. Do it! Du Rufeng, who had been observing, shouted. The grand formation slowly closed up, and waves of water elemental energy converged from the surroundings, transforming into a cage that enveloped the blazing flames within it. The timing was grasped perfectly. Zhu Zheng's face lit up with excitement. It's done. As soon as his voice fell, There was a loud bang and the cage formed by the water elemental force collapsed. The raging flames broke free from it and tried to escape underground. With the secret technique broken, the group of Chiqiao Di disciples who were casting the secret technique also cried out in surprise. All of them looked dispirited and fell to the ground. Zhu Zheng's smile stiffened on his face in an instant. Chapter 3862. The sudden change caught Du Rufeng by surprise. 300 years ago, the Fire Spirit Land had a precedent of collecting Scarlet Sky True Flame. At that time, he was also the one leading the team, so he was very familiar with this matter. However, he never expected such a thing to happen. Just as the scorching energy was about to escape into the ground, a voice suddenly shouted, "Where do you think you're going?" As soon as the voice fell, a layer of light swept across the surrounding 1,000 feet, and the ground instantly became extremely hard. Zhu Zheng looked up and saw Yang Kai holding the token. He activated the token's power and connected it to the orchard's array, blocking Scarlet Sky True Flame's escape route. Scarlet Firmament True Flame plunged into the ground, unable to escape. It was completely blocked outside. "Well done," Du Rufeng shouted. Then, he raised his hand, and a big blue net fell from the sky towards Kaixiao True Flame. It was unknown what kind of artifact this big net was, but it was exuding a bone-chilling cold. In the blink of an eye, Scarlet Sky True Flame was shrouded in the big net. Scarlet Sky True Flame tried to break free, but it couldn't get rid of the shackles. Du Rufeng made a series of hand seals and waved his hand. The big net tightened and caught Scarlet Sky True Flame in his hand. After carefully observing for a while, Du Rufeng's face showed a touch of surprise and he couldn't help but laugh. Zhu Zheng didn't react until this time. He quickly stepped forward and cupped his hands. "Brother Du, congratulations on successfully collecting Scarlet Sky True Flame." Du Rufeng stopped laughing and looked at him coldly. "You still have the face to talk. If this king didn't happen to have a heaven-capturing net, I'm afraid this Scarlet Sky Golden Flame would have disappeared." Zhu Zheng was stunned. "Scarlet Sky Golden Flame?" Du Rufeng put away the net and the thing in it and said coldly, "Do you think this is a third-grade Scarlet Sky True Flame? Isn't it?" Zhu Zheng was puzzled. "This is a fourth-grade Scarlet Sky Golden Flame." Du Rufeng gritted his teeth and shouted, "What a waste!" Zhu Zheng exclaimed, "Fourth grade?" Yang Kai was also amazed. It was obviously a third-grade material. How did it become fourth grade? However, when they thought about the changes that had just occurred and Du Rufeng's previous performance, they somewhat believed his words. Moreover, Du Rufeng had no reason to lie to them about this kind of thing. It was no wonder that the disciples of Kikichiao almost failed even though they were so well prepared. It turned out that there was a grade 4 material hidden under the ground. They had used the method to deal with a grade 3 material, so it was only natural that something went wrong. But it was a fourth-grade material. Rank 1 was 150 heaven opening pills, rank 2 was 1,500, rank 3 was 15,000, so wouldn't rank 4 be 150,000? The value had increased by more than 10 times. When the dispirited disciples of the Chiqiao land heard this, they became excited. Today, they had come with Du Rufeng to collect the heaven-splitting materials. Now that they had succeeded, the Venerable One would naturally reward them. The reward of a grade 4 material was much more than a grade 3 material. Moreover, in the entire Chiqiao lands, heaven-opening realm cultivators above the 4th grade could be counted on one hand. In other words, a 4th grade material was extremely precious to the Chiqiao lands. It was not something that could be measured by heaven-opening pills. Now that they had made such a great contribution, how could they not have a meteoric rise in the future? The group of disciples stepped forward, all of them smiling as they gathered around Du Rufeng, begging to broaden their horizons. Even these disciples of Chiqiao lands had never seen a 4th grade material before. How could Du Rufeng agree? The heaven-closing net Scarlet Sky Golden Flame was extremely important, and it was only by luck that they had been able to collect it. If something else happened, he wouldn't be able to bear the responsibility. With a stern expression, he reprimanded the group, dispelling their thoughts. Raising his head to look at Yang Kai, Du Rufeng's expression became much more amiable. "What's your name?" In truth, Yang Kai had already introduced himself, so Du Rufeng probably didn't take it to heart. Yang Kai once again introduced himself. Du Rufeng nodded. You've done well this time. I'll report today's matter to the Venerable, and you'll definitely be rewarded. Just now, if Yang Kai hadn't reacted quickly and used the orchard's command medallion to connect to the spirit array, Du Rufeng wouldn't have had the chance to use his heaven-closing net. Looking at Zhu Zheng, who was in charge of the entire orchard, his performance was mediocre and the information he had received was wrong, almost causing the Fire Spirit Land to lose a great opportunity. Thank you, Master, Yang Kai replied, but in his heart, he was wondering how much of a reward he would receive. For something worth 150,000, the reward should at least be a few thousand heaven-opening pills, right? This was quite a bit of income for him, so he was looking forward to it. Moreover, he was still thinking about how to earn merits as an odd-job worker in the orchard, but who knew that he would be rewarded in the blink of an eye? Du Rufeng waved at the others. You guys go first, I still have some things to ask. The group of Chiqiao disciples didn't stay any longer and flew up into the sky. Du Rufeng then turned to look at Zhu Zheng, his eyes cold. Zhu Zheng quivered and hurriedly said, Junior brother, I'll take my leave first. After everyone left, Du Rufeng waved his hand and set up a restriction around them, then stared at Yang Kai without blinking. Yang Kai frowned slightly. What Du Rufeng wanted to ask him, Yang Kai had an idea in his heart. After today's events, it was difficult not to raise suspicions, but whether the other party would be able to discover anything, Yang Kai wasn't sure. Thinking about this, Yang Kai cupped his fists and asked, What does Senior want to ask? Du Rufeng stood with his hands behind his back and said indifferently, There is something wrong with this piece of land, I'm sure you already know. For the past 10 years, this king has brought people here many times to investigate, but they couldn't find any clues. This time, thanks to you, we found out that it was all because of the scarlet sky golden flames. It's just luck, Master is overpraising me. I've never believed in luck. Since you were able to discover it, you must have your own ability, Du Rufeng said. This king has tried to stimulate the wood element before, but I couldn't stimulate the scarlet sky golden flames, nor could anyone else. Why are you the only one who can? What grade of wood element energy do you condense? So it was like that. Yang Kai had suspected that Du Rufeng would ask him this question. After all, others couldn't stimulate the scarlet sky golden flames, but he could. This undoubtedly meant that his wood element energy was special, and the most obvious difference was its grade. What grade of wood element energy did Master condense? Yang Kai asked instead of answering. Du Rufeng proudly said, 4th grade. He was the most outstanding disciple of the Fire Spirit Land and the one the Venerable Earth Protector had placed high hopes on, so he naturally wouldn't be careless on the path to splitting the heavens. The reason he hadn't broken through yet was because he needed to gather enough 4th grade materials to reach splitting the heavens in one go. Yang Kai shook his head. I don't know what grade of wood element energy I condensed. I haven't been in the universe world for long, so I don't know much about it. Before I met the Venerable, I happened to find something in the vast universe and inadvertently absorbed it, allowing me to condense wood element energy. Du Rufeng nodded and said, Release your Dao seal for me to see. This request was a bit rude. The Dao seal was the crystallization of Yang Kai's cultivation and his own Dao. It hid many of his secrets, so who would make such a request? Moreover, releasing the Dao seal was equivalent to a monster beast spitting out its monster core. It was an extremely dangerous matter. If he hadn't been forced into a corner in the star boundary, Yang Kai wouldn't have released his Dao seal to deal with the great demon god. However, in the other party's territory, refusing was not an easy matter. Looking at Du Rufeng's expression, if he didn't release his Dao seal, he definitely wouldn't give up. At that time, it would only be more troublesome. As such, after a moment of hesitation, Yang Kai urged his Dao seal. An ever-changing Dao seal appeared on his forehead, containing Yang Kai's comprehension of the void Dao. Inside the Dao seal, wood element force flowed. Yang Kai secretly raised his guard and paid close attention to Du Rufeng, waiting for him to discover something wrong. Staring at Yang Kai's Dao seal, Du Rufeng didn't even hesitate to use his divine sense to investigate it. Soon, his expression changed, wood element force above the 4th grade. Yang Kai's tense nerves relaxed greatly. It seemed that Du Rufeng could only judge that his wood element force was of a higher grade than his own, but was unable to determine its true rank. After all, Du Rufeng's knowledge was limited, so he pretended to be surprised and asked, "Master, are you serious? It can't be wrong." Du Rufeng clicked his tongue in wonder. "Your luck is really good, actually allowing you to obtain such an opportunity. It seems that luck isn't completely undesirable." Yang Kai grinned. "I also don't know what rank my wood element force is, but since Master says it's above the 4th grade, then it can't be wrong." Du Rufeng asked, "What exactly did you find in the void?" Yang Kai blurted out, "A small tree, sparkling like white jade, with a few sprouts and a few white jade-like leaves. The tree is about this tall, and it smells strange." He casually gestured, then looked at Du Rufeng and asked, "Master, do you recognize what it is?" Du Rufeng slowly shook his head. "Never heard of it." There was no way to investigate further, so he asked Yang Kai to put away his Dao seal so that his eyes wouldn't turn red. He casually asked, "You were the one who discovered the scarlet sky golden flame, right?" Yang Kai answered, "Yes." Although Zhu Zheng had warned him beforehand, since this ingrate didn't save him, Yang Kai was too lazy to share the credit with him. In any case, there was only him and Du Rufeng here, and Zhu Zheng wouldn't know what he said. Du Rufeng sneered, "Even that trash Zhu Zheng wouldn't be able to discover the scarlet sky golden flame here." Du Rufeng quickly left. Originally, he wanted to immediately report to the Venerable after taking the scarlet sky golden flame. After all, a 4th grade material was really hard to come by, but he stayed for a while to investigate Yang Kai's wood element force. Now that things were clear, there was no need to stay. As soon as Du Rufeng left, Zhu Zheng hurried over. "What did Brother Du ask you?" "I didn't ask anything. I just casually praised him." "Really?" Zhu Zheng looked at him suspiciously. Yang Kai said, "Master, if you don't believe me, why don't you ask Master Du?" Zhu Zheng coldly snorted, "That better be the case." He paused for a moment, then said, "You've made a great contribution today. When we return, the Venerable One and Brother Du will definitely reward you. Just wait for the good news." After saying that, he flew into the air, seemingly in a bad mood. Chapter 3863. In the central palace of the Fire Spirit Land, Du Rufeng hurried over and stopped in front of the hall, bowing respectfully, "Venerable." The thick door of the hall slowly opened, revealing a gap for a person to enter and exit. Du Rufeng stepped in and soon saw the Fire Spirit Land's Earth Protector, Duan Hai, sitting cross-legged in meditation, refining the heaven-opening pill. After waiting for half an hour, Duan Hai let out a sigh of relief, opened his eyes, and asked, "How are things going?" Du Rufeng showed a happy expression and cupped his fists, reporting to Venerable, "There was a big harvest." "3rd grade Scarlet Sky True Flame isn't a big harvest. What else did you find?" Duan Hai's eyes flashed. Du Rufeng quickly said, "The information was wrong, it wasn't 3rd grade Scarlet Sky True Flame, but 4th grade Scarlet Sky Golden Flame." "4th grade. Please take a look, Venerable," Du Rufeng said as he stepped forward and handed over the heaven-capturing net. Duan Hai took it and swept it with his divine sense before nodding. "It really is 4th grade Scarlet Sky Golden Flame. You did well this time. A 4th grade material is very precious to my 7 Openings land, keep it for yourself." He reached out and tossed the heaven-capturing net back. Du Rufeng was overjoyed. "Many thanks for Venerable's kindness." This Scarlet Sky Golden Flame was something he urgently needed, so he was naturally happy. Duan Hai said, "Give Zhu Zheng some benefits as well. After all, he was the one who found it, and it can be considered as solving a big problem for the orchard. It's a good time to report this to Venerable." Du Rufeng carefully put away the heaven-capturing net. "What happened today has nothing to do with Zhu Zheng. It was a servant who found this Scarlet Sky Golden Flame. Zhu Zheng lied about finding it himself, but his intention was just to take advantage of the situation." Duan Hai sneered, "It's not a big deal. Since he is the manager of the orchard and found a 4th grade material, he should be rewarded." "Yes," Duan Hai said curiously, "but a servant actually found traces of this Scarlet Sky Golden Flame. He has some skill." Du Rufeng smiled. He does have some skill, and his luck is quite good. Does Venerable remember the group of newcomers you brought back a few months ago? Duan-hai was surprised. Could it be one of those newcomers? It was discovered by one of them, Yang Kai. Furthermore, it was him who helped us obtain the Scarlet Firmament Golden Flame. Hearing this, Duan-hai's interest was piqued. How did he make such a big contribution? Du Rufeng gave a brief account of his trip to the orchard to collect the Scarlet Sky Golden Flame. Then he said, Disciple was a little suspicious at the time. I didn't know what was so special about this Yang Kai's wood elemental energy. Since only he could attract the Scarlet Sky Golden Flame, I had him release his Dao seal to observe. As a result, Disciple discovered that the wood elemental energy he condensed was above the 4th grade. Above 4th grade. Duan-hai's eyes flashed. Are you sure? Disciple confirms it without a doubt. His wood elemental energy was even purer and denser than Disciple's. If it wasn't at the 4th rank or above, it would be absolutely impossible for Disciple to have such feelings. This is interesting. A junior who has just entered the 3000 worlds actually had such an opportunity, Du Rufeng said. Du Rufeng said, I asked him about it. He said that before he met the Venerable One, he accidentally found a tall white jade-like tree in the vast universe. It had a few branches, a few leaves, and a strange smell. He accidentally absorbed it and condensed the power of the wood element. A white jade-like tree? And a strange smell. Duan-hai frowned as he stroked his beard and pondered. Du Rufeng observed from the side but didn't dare to disturb him. After a while, Duan-hai's hand movements suddenly stopped as a look of shock appeared on his face. Venerable, what is that tree? What is its grade? Du Rufeng asked. Duan-hai took a deep breath and said, if this old master is not mistaken, what he found should be body white jade, and it has already grown into the shape of a small tree. It should be at least a 5th grade material, most likely a 6th grade material. 5th grade, 6th grade. Du Rufeng exclaimed, his eyes turning red with jealousy. In the entire 7 Openings land, the most powerful heavenly monarch was only a 5th grade heavenly monarch. The other venerables were all 4th grade heavenly sovereigns, and they had all taken heaven opening pills to achieve this. In other words, when they first achieved heaven opening, the heavenly monarch was only a 4th grade heavenly sovereign while the other venerables were all 3rd grade heavenly sovereigns. That little servant Yang Kai had actually found a 5th grade or 6th grade heavenly opening genius all of a sudden. Was he trying to defy the heavens? If he could find a few more 5th grade or 6th grade heavenly sovereigns, wouldn't he be able to directly reach the 5th grade or 6th grade heavenly opening realm? At that time, who in the entire 7 Openings land would be his opponent? Good luck, good luck. Duan-hai nodded repeatedly. Du Rufeng's expression fluctuated for a while before suppressing the jealousy in his heart and cupping his fists again. There is one more thing I must report to Venerable. It is also related to this little servant Yang Kai. Speak. I don't know how this guy offended Great General Sai Chen, but the Great General has been using his head as a nest. When this disciple went over, the Great General had been lying on top of his head. Duan-hai was surprised. Sai Chen was lying on top of his head. Yes. Duan-hai couldn't help but laugh. It seems that Sai Chen quite likes this guy. Du Rufeng was stunned. Likes? Where did this come from? Duan-hai said, if Sai Chen didn't like this guy, he wouldn't be so close to him. Du Rufeng was speechless. This kind of liking, he would rather not have it. It was too embarrassing. Then Yang Kai. Du Rufeng hesitated. If he didn't know that Yang Kai had such a high level of wood elemental energy, it would have been fine, but now that he knew, he couldn't treat him lightly. However, Du Rufeng didn't know how to deal with him, so he could only wait for the Venerable's instructions. Duan-hai pondered for a while, then suddenly asked, how long has Brother Yu Lian been in seclusion? Du Rufeng bowed. Brother Yu Lian was in seclusion 10 years ago to condense earth elemental energy, so it shouldn't be long before he comes out. At this point, he suddenly realized, this disciple knows what to do. Go. Duan-hai waved his hand and closed his eyes again. Du Rufeng respectfully retreated. After he walked out of the main hall, the heavy doors of the main hall slowly closed. In the orchard, Old Fang's eyes widened as he exclaimed, 4th grade heaven opening talent. Are you for real, little brat? Are you lying to me? In his excitement, he stopped calling him little brat and directly called him little brat. Yang Kai picked up his wine cup and took a sip. Why would I lie to you? That Du Rufeng personally said that it was a 4th grade scarlet sky golden flame. At that time, if he didn't have a suitable artifact, he would have failed. Good heavens! Old Fang exclaimed, a 4th grade artifact, doesn't that mean it's worth 150,000? Yang Kai squinted at him. Why are you so excited? It's none of your business. Old Fang said, it's none of my business, but it's yours. You were the one who discovered it, so how much of a reward will you get? Who knows? Yang Kai shrugged. In fact, what he cared about now was not the reward, but his wood elemental energy. Before, he had been forced to release his Dao seal for Du Rufeng to observe, and although the other party hadn't been able to discover anything, he still had the Earth Protector behind him. With Duanhai's knowledge and experience, he didn't know if the lies he had casually made up would be able to fool him. After thinking about it for a while, Yang Kai said, Old Fang, I have something to ask you. Go ahead, little brother. Have you ever heard of a secret technique that allows one to forcibly seize the yin, yang, and 5 elements from others? What kind of secret technique is that? Old Fang's eyes widened. Yang Kai was speechless. I don't know, that's why I'm asking you. If I knew, why would I bother asking you? I've never heard of such a thing. Old Fang shook his head like a rattledrum, but even if there is such a secret technique, it's not surprising. This old man left his universe world and came to this fire spirit land to work as a handyman. He hasn't been out since, so I don't know much about the outside world. Why do you ask? Just asking, Yang Kai said perfunctorily. Old Fang looked at him for a while before chuckling. Little brother, don't worry too much. As the saying goes, when the cart reaches the mountain, there will always be a way out. We were just worried about your plot of land and fruit trees before, but who would have thought that in the blink of an eye, little brother would make such a great contribution? That Fang Tai thinks he can act arrogantly just because he has made 2 contributions. If he were to learn of little brother's situation, wouldn't he be ashamed to death? What's there to be ashamed of? Yang Kai laughed. The rewards of the Fire Spirit Land came quickly, and perhaps because the 4th grade Scarlet Sky Golden Flames were too important, Zhu Zheng came again 3 days after that day. Yang Kai and Old Fang were playing chess when they saw him arrive, so they quickly got up and bowed. Zhu Zheng placed one hand behind his back and tossed a space ring to Yang Kai with the other, saying lightly, Yang Kai, you did a good job in collecting the Scarlet Sky Golden Flames. When the Venerable learned of this, he praised you greatly. These are all rewards from the Venerable. Yang Kai caught the space ring and swept it with his divine sense. He was slightly surprised, but he quickly composed himself and put away the space ring before cupping his fists and saying, Thank you, Venerable. Zhu Zheng nodded calmly but didn't say anything, simply looking up at the sky with his hands behind his back, as if there was a wonderful scenery in the sky, but he didn't show any intention of leaving immediately. Old Fang kept signaling Yang Kai with his eyes, but when he saw that Yang Kai wasn't paying attention to him, he poked him with his hand. Yang Kai turned his head and saw Old Fang pointing angrily in Zhu Zheng's direction, and his eyes kept drifting in that direction. Yang Kai asked curiously, Old Fang, what's wrong with your mouth? Old Fang almost vomited blood. He felt that his hint was obvious enough, and Yang Kai wasn't an idiot, so how could he not understand? He couldn't secretly send a message in front of Zhu Zheng, so he was anxious. On the other hand, Zhu Zheng's expression was getting worse and colder. Seeing that Yang Kai didn't seem to understand, Old Fang had no choice but to take out a space ring and walk to Zhu Zheng's side. He smiled apologetically and handed the space ring over. I'm really sorry to trouble Steward Chow to come here personally. Thank you for your hard work, Master Steward. Chapter 3864. Zhu Zheng took the space ring with a cold expression and swept it with his divine sense, discovering that there were only 20 heaven-opening pills inside. Coldly snorting, he threw the space ring on the ground and flicked his sleeve. Not at all, I'm leaving. If it were any other time, Zhu Zheng would have gladly accepted these 20 pills, but today was different. Compared to the rewards Yang Kai had received, what were these 20 heaven-opening pills? It was nothing more than a small profit. Steward Chow, Steward Chow. Old Fang hurriedly picked up the space ring and chased after him. After a long time, Old Fang returned with a sigh, and from the look on his face, it was obvious that things had not gone well. When he returned, he found Yang Kai holding the space ring and inspecting the heaven-opening pills inside, grinning from ear to ear. Seeing this, Old Fang couldn't help pointing at him angrily and scolding, "Look at you, why did you offend him for no reason? You should have just shared some benefits with him." Yang Kai sneered, "If the gifts we gave before were useful, I wouldn't have cared, but you and I clearly gave him generous gifts before, yet he just stood by and watched us die. Why should we let him off so easily now?" Old Fang stomped his foot and said, "He is the manager of the orchard after all, it's better to spend money to avoid disasters than to offend him. If he were to make things difficult for you in the future, would you be able to bear it?" "I'll deal with whatever comes my way." Yang Kai sneered, "Although he's the manager, he can't do whatever he wants. Although I'm just a servant, I'm not necessarily afraid of him." "Huh." Old Fang sighed, "Now that things have gotten to this point, it's useless to say anything else." After sitting down and drinking a glass of wine, he saw Yang Kai still smiling mischievously, so he couldn't help asking, "How much did the Venerable reward you this time? Why are you smiling like this? Take a look for yourself." Yang Kai tossed the space ring in his hand over. Old Fang caught it, swept it with his divine sense, and exclaimed, "So many." Although there was no detailed count, there were at least 4,000 to 5,000 heaven-opening pills inside the space ring. This was already an extremely terrifying number for an odd-job worker. Although he had already expected that the Venerable One would reward him handsomely, he did not expect it to be so many. He thought that he would at most get a few hundred to 1,000 pieces. Yang Kai said, 5,000. I just don't know if that Zhu Zheng embezzled any of it. Old Fang shook his head and said, "That's not necessary. This was directly bestowed by the Venerable One. He's just a small orchard manager, and he doesn't have the guts to do anything. Otherwise, if the Venerable One finds out, he won't let him off easily. No wonder he didn't care for the 20 heaven-opening pills I gave him. So that's why." Yang Kai laughed and said, "Now you know why I pretended to be stupid. If I were to share the benefits with him, how much would be appropriate? With his appetite, I'm afraid he won't be satisfied without at least 1,000 heaven-opening pills. Since he was so heartless before, why should I give him 1,000 heaven-opening pills?" Old Fang nodded and said, "That's true. If we give him too little, I'm afraid he'll hold a grudge. If we give him too much, we'll be at a disadvantage. We might as well ignore him." Indeed. Yang Kai took back his space ring and grinned. Old Fang was extremely envious. With 5,000 heaven-opening pills in his hands, which servant in the entire Chichiao land could compare? He had seen the most meritorious service Yang Kai had ever received was no more than 60 heaven-opening pills. These 5,000 heaven-opening pills were enough for a servant to save for hundreds or even thousands of years without eating or drinking. Adding on Yang Kai's previous income, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was now the richest servant in the entire Chichiao land. And how long had he been in the Chichiao land? Less than 3 months. Old Fang, don't you think this reward is a bit too much? Yang Kai suddenly frowned. Although the 4th grade heaven-opening material was worth 150,000 heaven-opening pills, and Yang Kai had contributed greatly to it, such a large reward was still a bit surprising. More isn't enough. Old Fang was stunned. This is the first time I've heard someone complain about being rewarded too much. If you think it's too much, why don't you share half with me? I don't mind. Yang Kai pretended not to hear. Old Fang sighed again. But with this, I'm afraid you won't be able to leave this place. As a servant, he naturally wanted to take care of as many fruit trees as possible. That way, he would have more income and more opportunities to perform meritorious service. None of the servants in the servant room would complain about the size of the orchard they were in charge of. They all wished for it to be as big as possible. It doesn't matter. Yang Kai gave a light laugh. I don't rely on this. Old Fang thought about it and felt that what he said made sense. Yang Kai now had his own way of making money and was different from other servants. The size of the orchard he took care of didn't make much of a difference to him. It could even be said that taking care of a smaller orchard would be more leisurely. After working here for several hundred years, this was the first time he had seen someone so carefree as a servant. He couldn't help but admire him. The next few days were peaceful. From time to time, people would come to Old Fang to sell blue flame silkworms. Old Fang would take them all and give them to Yang Kai to feed Great General Sai Chen. Great General Sai Chen would continuously spit out heaven-opening pills. Old Fang smiled all day long. He hadn't lived as comfortably as these 2 months in the past several hundred years. Several days passed in the blink of an eye. Yang Kai, who was lying under a fruit tree and sunbathing, suddenly opened his eyes and looked in a certain direction. At the same time, Old Fang, who was checking his income for the past few days, also turned his head to look. In the next instant, his expression changed slightly. "Brother, get up." Yang Kai lazily turned over and turned his back to him. Old Fang was speechless and got up to greet him. After a short while, a figure landed in front of him. It was Zhu Zheng. Old Fang quickly bowed. Zhu Zheng nodded and glanced around. Seeing that Yang Kai didn't put him in his eyes at all, his expression suddenly becoming cold as he snorted heavily. A few days ago, he had wanted to take some benefits from Yang Kai but had failed, so after returning, he was filled with anger. He had also checked the heaven-opening pills in Yang Kai's space ring and found that there were 5,000 of them. At that time, as long as he could get 20%, he would have earned 1,000, but Yang Kai had no intention of giving him anything. If it weren't for Du Rufeng's prior warning, he would have already taught Yang Kai a lesson. These past few days, he had wanted Yang Kai to think things through and make up for his mistakes, but who would have thought that even now, Yang Kai hadn't come looking for him. When he came over to take a look, he found that this guy was actually sleeping and sunbathing, causing him to almost explode with anger. As a servant, instead of taking care of the fruit trees, you're actually slacking off here. Yang Kai, what do you want? Zhu Zheng shouted. Yang Kai turned over and squinted at him before getting up and clapping his hands. So it's Steward Chow. Steward Chow, what's the matter? You. Zhu Zheng was furious. Let me ask you, have you taken good care of the fruit trees in your orchard? I've taken good care of them. Steward Chow, if you don't feel assured, you can check them. If there's anything wrong, I'll immediately correct it. You're so confident. Zhu Zheng sneered. If he really wanted to nitpick, no matter how well Yang Kai took care of the fruit trees, it would be useless. Laro Fang sensed that something was wrong. Yang Kai was digging his own grave, so he couldn't help but be shocked. He quickly stepped forward and smiled apologetically. Steward Chow, please calm down. This guy's dozens of fruit trees are really well taken care of. I've also personally checked them. Steward Chow, you've come from afar. Sit down and have some wine. As he spoke, he went to pull Zhu Zheng. Zhu Zheng looked at him coldly. Get lost. Who do you think you are? Laro Fang's hand froze in the air, and he looked embarrassed. He knew that Zhu Zheng was really angry this time. Otherwise, he wouldn't have said such words. In the past, although he was greedy for money, his attitude towards the handymen was still good. Of course, the premise was that there was enough filial piety. But today, he spoke so harshly. Zhu Zheng turned to look at Yang Kai again and suppressed the anger in his heart. Today, he came here because he had something to do. Although he was unhappy with Yang Kai's attitude, he couldn't delay it any longer. This should have been done a few days ago, but he was angry at Yang Kai's insensitivity and didn't mention it. After delaying it for a few days, he was also worried that something unexpected would happen. Yang Kai, come with me. Zhu Zheng snorted. Although he couldn't do anything to Yang Kai because of Du Rufeng's instructions, it didn't mean that he couldn't punish Yang Kai. He was the steward, and it was easy for him to punish Yang Kai. What can I do for you, Steward Chow? Yang Kai asked. Zhu Zheng said, don't talk nonsense, come here when I tell you to. Then, he flew in a direction. Yang Kai frowned. He didn't know what Zhu Zheng was going to do. Could it be that he was angry and wanted to beat him up? He didn't have the guts to kill him. Although the handyman's status was low, every one of them was a precious resource in the Fire Spirit Land. Otherwise, the Earth Protector Venerable wouldn't go out and cast a spell to attract people here. Therefore, Zhu Zheng couldn't kill him. In the whole fire spirit land, only the Earth Protector Venerable had the power to kill the Handamen. Lao Fang was obviously worried. He looked at Yang Kai and said, "You can't bear with small things and spoil great plans. Don't be so impulsive when you get there later. If there's anything you want to say, talk it out. If the steward Chow wants to do anything to you, just bear with it and don't fight back. Otherwise, you'll have a hard time in the future." Yang Kai didn't say anything. He looked at the direction Zhu Zheng left and had no choice but to follow him. He thought to himself, if Zhu Zheng really wants to attack me later, what should I do? Yes, I'll just grab the general and throw him over. Let's see if he dares to fight back. With his mind set, Yang Kai patted the general on top of his head. "I'll have to rely on you later." The general didn't understand what Yang Kai meant and cried out twice. He followed behind Zhu Zheng for a while. After the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, he finally landed in an orchard. Yang Kai also landed. He looked around and was puzzled. Even if Zhu Zheng wanted to teach him a lesson, he didn't have to choose this place, right? If something happened to the fruit trees around here, Zhu Zheng wouldn't be able to bear the consequences. If he doesn't want to teach me a lesson, then why did he bring me here? Just as Yang Kai was puzzled, Zhu Zheng suddenly shouted, "Where are the workers of this orchard?" Not even 3 breaths after he said that, a rumbling sound could be heard. It was like thunder rolling across the earth. Even the ground was trembling, as if some kind of fierce beast was charging over. Following that, a burly figure came from afar and rushed to Zhu Zheng. He nodded and bowed, I'm here. So it's the steward Chow. I apologize for not coming out to greet you. Ha ha ha, Steward Chow, please take a seat." Chapter 3865. Yang Kai took a closer look and found that he actually knew the person who had just arrived. He had been in the Handaman room for less than 3 months and had not interacted with many people. However, the person in front of him was definitely one of them. It was Xiong Yong, the person who had chased Dai Yu to the market and intercepted him outside the market. He had seen him twice and only communicated with him once. However, Yang Kai felt that this person was simple-minded and domineering. So, this orchard was under Xiong Yong's management. Why did Zhu Zheng bring him here? Yang Kai was puzzled. On the other side, Xiong Yong also saw Yang Kai and his eyes widened. He touched his head with one hand and pointed at Yang Kai with the other. You. I think I've seen you somewhere before. Smiling, Kai Yang replied, "The city square." With this reminder, Xiong Yong suddenly realized. "Oh, right, it's you. I remember now. You know him?" Zhu Zheng looked at him coldly. When he heard this, he looked from one to the other and a subtle smile appeared on his face. "No." Xiong Yong shook his head and turned to look at Zhu Zheng. "Steward Chow, what can I do for you?" Zhu Zheng put his hands behind his back and said lightly, "I'm here to inform you that from today onwards, your orchard will be under Yang Kai's management." Xiong Yong's mouth opened so wide that it could fit a fist. He stood there stupidly and did not recover from his shock for a long time. Yang Kai was also stunned. How could there be such a good thing? This was a good thing for any handaman. The orchard he was in charge of was too small and there were too few fruit trees. If it were anywhere else, he would have made a lot of money. This was also why he had asked Old Fang to give him a gift. However, he had offended Zhu Zheng. How could Zhu Zheng let him have an easy time? Even if he would not do anything to him openly, he could still do something secretly. Could it be that there was something wrong with Xiong Yong's land? As he thought about it, he suddenly realized that there was no problem with Xiong Yong's plot of land. Zhu Zheng's actions had a deeper meaning. On the other side, Xiong Yong hesitated for a moment and scratched his head. "Hey, Steward Chow, what did you just say?" "I don't think I heard you clearly." Zhu Zheng said word by word, "From today onwards, this piece of land will be taken over by Yang Kai. Do you hear me?" Xiong Yong immediately looked like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. The veins on his forehead bulged, and he pointed at Yang Kai with his thick fingers. "Him? Why?" Zhu Zheng looked at him coldly. "Just because this is my order, is it enough? What, do you not place this steward in your eyes?" As he spoke, the aura of a heaven-opening realm expert slowly spread out. Feeling this pressure, the furious Xiong Yong sobered up a little. He put on a smile and said, "No, Steward Ju, how could this Xiong dare to not put you in his eyes? Is there some misunderstanding in this matter? Where did this Xiong not do well enough? Why do you suddenly want someone else to take over my territory? It has nothing to do with you." Yang Kai also cupped his hands and said, "Steward Chow, since Brother Xiong is so reluctant, why don't we just forget about it? My land is quite good, there's no need to change it." Zhu Zheng sneered, "It's not up to you to decide whether to change it or not. This steward won't hide it from you. Brother Du said this, so today, whether you want to change it or not, you have to change it." Yang Kai was speechless. He wondered why Du Rufeng was involved in this small matter. Wasn't he the disciple of the Fire Spirit Land's consul? However, since Zhu Zheng said so, it couldn't be wrong. Could it be because he helped him collect the Scarlet Firmament Golden Flame a few days ago? Xiong Yong blinked a few times. "Master Du ordered him to take over my territory?" If that was really the case, then he had nothing to say. He could only blame himself for being disliked by Du Rufeng. Zhu Zheng said, "No, he didn't." "Then why is it my land?" Xiong Yong was not happy. After saying that, he pulled Zhu Zheng's arm and pulled him to a distance. He leaned over and whispered something to him. Yang Kai was too lazy to eavesdrop. If he did, he would be discovered, so he didn't know what they were talking about. He only saw Xiong Yong murmuring endlessly. Zhu Zheng shook his head from time to time. Xiong Yong turned his head to look at Yang Kai. His eyes were full of murderous intent. For him, today's matter was unexpected. Steward Chow was stronger than him and had a higher status. He couldn't do anything to him, so he could only blame it on Yang Kai. Yang Kai put his hands behind his back. From time to time, he looked up at the sky and then down at the ground. He didn't look at Xiong Yong, which made him very angry. Since Zhu Zheng brought Yang Kai here today, it meant that he had made arrangements. No matter what Xiong Yong said, there was nothing he could do. Sure enough, after the two talked for 30 minutes, Xiong Yong's expression became more and more unpleasant. At some point, he left Zhu Zheng behind and rushed to Yang Kai. He waved his fist at him and said fiercely, "Boy, if you know what's good for you, go to Steward Chow and tell him that you don't want this land. Otherwise, I'll teach you a lesson." Yang Kai sighed. He looked past Xiong Yong and glanced at Zhu Zheng. Seeing his evil smile, he knew that he was right. Zhu Zheng wanted to kill with a borrowed knife. If he wanted to kill with a borrowed knife, of course he couldn't let him do as he wished. He said, "Brother Xiong, I can't do anything about this. I'm innocent. I was dragged here by Steward Chow just now. I don't know what happened. But since Steward Chow has made up his mind, it's impossible for him to change his mind. How about this? I'll take care of this land for you. If there are any benefits or contributions, you can take them all. What do you think?" "Nothing." Xiong Yong spat. "My feng shui land, no matter how much you give me, I won't exchange it." Yang Kai almost choked to death. What kind of feng shui land was there in an orchard? Wasn't it the same everywhere? It was just a matter of size. "You can take the income from my land too," Yang Kai added. Xiong Yong waved his big hand, almost hitting Yang Kai's face. "I said, no matter how much you give me, I won't exchange it. Hurry up and settle this." Yang Kai was so angry that he laughed. He felt that he had made enough concessions. He would rather give up the income from 2 plots of land to keep the peace. Xiong Yong really had the brain of a bear. He didn't know why he was so obsessed with his land. Yang Kai didn't want to waste his breath on this attitude. He couldn't be bothered to talk to him. "Why are you still talking so much? If you don't have anything to pack, come with me," Zhu Zheng urged from not far away. Xiong Yong turned his head and wanted to say something, but when he saw Zhu Zheng's cold expression, he knew that it was useless to say anything. He could only accept his fate. He glared at Yang Kai and said, "Just you wait, I'll be back." As Zhu Zheng walked away, he looked back 3 times. His eyes were full of threats. Yang Kai only smacked his lips when the two disappeared from his sight. Zhu Zheng's move was good. He used Du Rufeng's name to offend someone for no reason. Moreover, it was someone who looked very difficult to deal with. Even if this matter was spread out, he would still be in the right. After all, for an odd job worker, this was already a show of kindness. No one could say anything about it. But in reality, Yang Kai didn't want to change his territory at all. The hidden danger in his original territory had already been solved. He also had the god of fortune, General Sai Chen. He didn't need to rely on the orchard's harvest like the other odd job workers. Comparatively speaking, he preferred his own plot of land. It was small and didn't require much energy to take care of it. Most importantly, it was next to Old Fang. When he was bored, he could drink with Old Fang and play chess. But now that things had come to this, he could only take things as they came. This orchard was much larger than his previous one. There was also a thatched hut next to it. The construction was very exquisite. Yang Kai could tell at a glance that it wasn't the work of that bear Xiong Yong. It was probably left behind by one of the odd job workers who took care of the fruit trees. Old Fang also had his own hut. The reason why Yang Kai didn't have one before was because the orchard was too small and there wasn't enough space to build one. Otherwise, he would have his own hut. After all, the odd job workers had to stay in the orchard for nearly a month. Although it wasn't a big deal to sleep in the open, it was still better to have a place to stay. Yang Kai pushed open the door and entered. Dust hit him in the face and he almost choked. He was speechless. How long had it been since that bear entered this hut? The dust inside was already 3 inches thick. He used his technique to clean up the hut and took out some tables and chairs from his space ring. The hut looked more presentable now. Sitting cross-legged on the bed, Yang Kai took out the token and held it in his hand. Before Zhu Zheng left, he had swapped his token with Xiong Yong's. The tokens in each territory were different. Only by refining the token could Yang Kai know the details of this orchard. Yang Kai naturally refined the token as soon as possible. Today's events had made him more vigilant. He felt that he had to be more careful in the future to avoid giving Zhu Zheng something to use against him. Tokens were specially made for odd job workers in the Fire Spirit Land. Because they often changed owners, it wasn't difficult to refine them. In less than an hour, the token had been completely refined. Sending his divine sense into it, Yang Kai clicked his tongue. It seemed that Xiong Yong had been doing quite well before. Although this orchard wasn't particularly large, it was at least half the size of Old Fang's. The number of fruit trees was also about half. The details of each fruit tree couldn't be seen in the token, so Yang Kai could only check them one by one to see if there was anything he needed to pay attention to. Leaving the hut, Yang Kai strolled around his orchard, inspecting each fruit tree. Looking around, Yang Kai discovered that Xiong Yong was quite careless in taking care of the fruit trees. There were many places where he didn't do a good job. Yang Kai didn't know how Xiong Yong had managed to get such a large territory. If Old Fang were to take care of the same orchard, he would definitely be in a much better condition than Xiong Yong. Yang Kai had no choice but to slowly correct his mistakes. After a day, Yang Kai was extremely busy. He missed his own plot of land, but fortunately, the number of fruits on the fruit trees was correct. Chapter 3866. The next day, Yang Kai continued to patrol his orchard, taking care of the fruit trees. While he was catching insects for the fruit trees, he suddenly heard a familiar voice call from not far away, "Yang Kai?" Yang Kai looked up and saw a beautiful figure standing not far away from the fiery red background. She was looking at him curiously, her beautiful eyes full of confusion. "Xiao Dai." Yang Kai was amused. "Why are you here?" Dai Yu walked over and looked around. "I was about to ask you, why are you here? Isn't this Xiong Yong's orchard? It's mine now." Yang Kai smiled, then showed a look of understanding. "You're here too?" Dai Yu pointed to the side. Yang Kai nodded. "No wonder this place has good feng shui, so that's why." "What good feng shui?" Dai Yu didn't understand. "It's nothing." Yang Kai shook his head and didn't explain. When he heard Xiong Yong talk about good feng shui yesterday, he felt it was strange and didn't know what was so good about this place. Seeing Dai Yu today, he finally understood. For others, This place might not be much different from other places, but for Xiong there was no better place in the entire orchard. No wonder he had such a big reaction when Zhu Zheng wanted to change his territory yesterday. Moreover, when Zhu Zheng came with him, he didn't see him. He was probably pestering Dai Yu and spending most of his time on her. How could he take care of such a large orchard? The dust in the small house could also be explained. He probably didn't have the time to go back to the small house. From the looks of it now, Zhu Zheng's choice of using someone else's knife to kill wasn't random, but targeted specifically. He definitely knew Xiong feelings for Dai Yu, and deliberately asked him to take his place. It would be strange if Xiong didn't hate him now. What did Xiong do? Why are you taking over this land? Dai Yu was puzzled. Yang Kai smiled bitterly. It's a long story. Then take your time. Dai Yu pursed her lips and smiled. Since there was nothing to do and they were familiar with each other, Yang Kai told her everything that had happened. Dai Yu covered her mouth in shock when she heard that Yang Kai had found the 4th rank Scarlet Sky Golden Flame. Yang Kai, who had made such a great contribution, was not only rewarded by Du Rufeng but also transferred to this orchard. However, he had offended Zhu Zheng and now Xiong. This was really a blessing and disaster. You've been living such a wonderful life. Dai Yu's eyes curved into crescents as she smiled. Yang Kai squinted at her. Why do I feel like you're gloating? No. Dai Yu hurriedly waved her hand. It's true. I've never seen a handyman stir up so much trouble in just a few months. And this isn't even the general's matter. Dai Yu took out a blue flame silkworm and fed it to the general. The general ate it lazily and didn't reward him. Do you think I want to do this? Yang Kai was furious. Sometimes, even if he didn't want to, trouble would still fall from the sky. It doesn't matter. According to what you said, you have made a great contribution before. I'm afraid that Master Du will look at you differently and want to promote you. So even if Zhu Zheng doesn't like you, he can't do anything to you. Of course, the premise is that you don't make too big a mistake. Even so, Zhu Zheng isn't easy to get along with. Xiong matter shows that. Dai Yu nodded slightly, killing with a borrowed knife. Xiong, that guy. She looked like she had a headache because of Xiong. Don't worry. If Xiong comes looking for trouble, I'll warn him. Don't do that. If he really comes looking for trouble, you'll only make things worse. Yang Kai quickly stopped her. Last time, that black bear had seen him and Dai Yu going to the shopping district together and had even blocked their way back. If Dai Yu did anything else, it would only cause Xiong to misunderstand even more. That's true. Dai Yu frowned. Then what should we do? Nothing. Yang Kai shrugged. Right, how many blue flame silkworms did you get these days? Give them to me now. Sure. Dai Yu gave the blue flame silkworms to Yang Kai. Yang Kai patted the general on his head. It's time to eat. Even though Yang Kai knew that Xiong wouldn't let it go and would definitely come looking for trouble, he didn't expect him to come so soon. Not long after Dai Yu left, the black bear descended from the sky and landed in front of Yang Kai. Yang Kai blinked at him. Brother Xiong, you're here? Xiong's eyes spat fire. Just you wait, I'll get even with you later. Leaving behind these harsh words, he hurried towards Dai Yu's orchard. After a short while, Yang Kai heard a commotion and Xiong's cries of pain coming from the depths of the orchard. A moment later, Xiong came back with a bloody nose and a swollen face. Although he was in a sorry state, his expression was full of satisfaction. He walked straight up to Yang Kai and looked down at him. Kid, do you have any wine? Yang Kai didn't look at him, afraid that he would laugh out loud. He casually took out a jar of wine and handed it over. Xiong opened the wine seal and gulped down half a jar of wine before he burped in satisfaction. He nodded and said, Kid, your attitude is pretty good. Yang Kai asked as he busied himself, Doesn't Brother Xiong need to take care of the orchard? How come you have time to come here? Xiong spat on the ground. You call that place an orchard? I can see it all at a glance. It's too small and I'm too lazy to take care of it, so I left it all to an old guy nearby. Yang Kai turned to look at him. Is that old guy surnamed Fang? Yes, that's him. Xiong nodded. He also asked about you. He asked what happened to you. It seems that he has a good relationship with you. Only then did Yang Kai remember that he had forgotten to tell Old Fang that he was safe. Yesterday, he was taken away by Zhu Zheng for some unknown reason and then directly stuffed into this place. He didn't have time to go back, so Old Fang was probably worried about him. Then what did you say? Xiong Yong sneered. Why should I tell him? Yang Kai was speechless. He took out the communication device with Old Fang and sent a message. He immediately received a reply asking him what had happened. It could be seen that Old Fang had been waiting for him to contact him for the past 2 days. Yang Kai couldn't tell him the details if he didn't meet him face to face. He could only tell him not to worry and that he was fine. He would tell him when he rested. After a few words with Old Fang, Yang Kai put away the device and turned to look at Xiong Yong. She really hit him hard. Xiong Yong's strength was not bad, so Dai you must have not held back. I'm used to it. It's no big deal. Xiong Yong chuckled. Yang Kai was full of admiration. Brother Xiong is really a saint of love. What do you know? Xiong Yong snorted, his mouth full of the smell of alcohol. If it wasn't for Dai, I would have died many years ago. My life is hers, so what if she beats me a few times? Yang Kai asked curiously. Miss Dai, you saved Brother Xiong's life. Xiong Yong snorted, I have nothing to say to you. Why are you asking so many questions? We're just chatting. There's nothing to do anyway. Xiong Yong frowned and pondered for a while. He seemed to think that Yang Kai's words made sense, so his attitude softened a little. Then tell me, why doesn't Dai like me? What did I do wrong? How would I know if you ask me? You should ask Dai you. Besides, love is a matter between two people. What's the use of being warm to one person? Is it too tight? Yang Kai asked. What's too tight? Xiong Yong stared. You're pushing too hard. Yang Kai explained. Think about it from another perspective. If a woman pestered you all day and didn't give you any time to breathe, how would you feel? Is she beautiful? Is there a difference? This time it was Yang Kai's turn to stare. Of course there's a difference. Xiong Yong snorted, if she's beautiful, I'll do her immediately and make her my woman. If she's ugly, I'll give her a few punches and kicks. Hey, boy, are you saying I'm ugly? How am I ugly? Yang Kai sternly said, Brother Xiong is such a heroic and extraordinary person. How can you be associated with the word ugly? It's probably because Dai Yu doesn't know how to appreciate your beauty. He didn't know why, but his conscience inexplicably hurt. Xiong Yong narrowed his eyes. You mean, Dai's taste is bad? Yang Kai waved his hand and said, Brother Xiong, please, I still have something to do. A palm patted directly on Yang Kai's shoulder, making him bend down. Xiong Yong said, Don't go, don't go. Let's talk clearly. Talk about what? Yang Kai turned his head and looked at him. Tell me, how can I make Dai follow me willingly? As long as you help me this time, I'll let bygones be bygones. Damn it, how can I help you? It's up to you, okay? Yang Kai was really speechless. But looking at Xiong Yong's posture, if he didn't say something, it wouldn't end well. After hesitating for a while, he said, Why don't you try to play hard to get? Xiong Yong's eyes lit up. He looked around for a while and said sneakily, How do I play hard to get? Yang Kai also lowered his voice. I saw Brother Xiong pestering Dai Yu before. She should be used to you going to her every day. Under such circumstances, if you suddenly stop going to her, will she be very strange? Will she think about what you are busy with? Did he suffer some kind of injury? As long as she has these thoughts, she will start to care about you. Men and women are the same. What you can't get is the best. If you take the initiative to stick to her, she won't know how to cherish you. Xiong Yong's heart was shaken. His face was flushed as if he was imagining the beautiful scene in the future. He licked his lips and said, Will this work? How do you know if you don't try? Anyway, there's no loss. If it doesn't work, we'll think of another way. Okay. Xiong Yong clenched his fist and hit his palm. Let's do as you say. When do we start? There's no time like the present. Let's do it now. Good. Xiong Yong strode away, then I'll go back first. If Dai Yu asks about me later, remember to tell me. Chapter 3867. Watching Seongyong leave, Yang Kai breathed a sigh of relief. He really didn't expect this guy to be so easy to fool. However, after only 2 days of leisure, Seongyong came again. Yang Kai felt a headache whenever he saw him. Since he couldn't avoid him, he could only greet him. "Brother Seong, you're here?" Seongyong rushed in front of him, looked around, and asked in a low voice, "How was it? How was it?" "What do you mean, how was it?" Yang Kai was puzzled by his question. Did Xiao Dai ask about me? Did she miss me? Did she cry and shout that she wanted to find me? Ah! Looking at his expectant face, Yang Kai couldn't bear to tell him the truth. He could only say, "I'm not sure. I haven't seen Miss Dai these 2 days. I just came here and was busy taking care of the orchard." Trash. Seongyong squinted at Yang Kai. "Why don't you ask around? What's the use of having someone so useless?" Yang Kai's mouth twitched. He didn't know what to say. Seongyong shook his arms. "I'll ask around myself." Passing by Yang Kai, he went straight to Dai-Yu's orchard. After a short while, there was the familiar sound of Seongyong shouting in pain again. A moment later, Seongyong limped back with a bruised nose and a swollen face. His nose and mouth were full of blood. Yang Kai trembled with fear. Walking in front of Yang Kai, Seongyong said angrily, "What kind of bullshit idea was that? It didn't work at all. Xiao Dai hit me even harder." Yang Kai sighed. "Brother Seong, there's something I don't know if I should say or not. If you have something to say, say it." Seongyong coldly snorted and wiped the blood under his nose. "There are plenty of fish in the sea," Seongyong laughed. "Although there are many women in this world, I've decided on Xiao Dai in this life. Other than Xiao Dai, even if the most beautiful woman in the world stood in front of me, I wouldn't give her a second look. This was destined from the moment she saved me. She's destined to be my woman. If anyone dares to have any ideas about her, I'll eat their flesh and drink their blood." Hearing this, Yang Kai was in awe. He really didn't expect Seongyong to be so infatuated. It's just that his way of chasing a woman was a little annoying and his IQ was worrying. But then again, even though Seongyong was a bit hateful, he treated Dai-Yu well. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been so happy to be beaten like this every time. "Do you have any ideas about Xiao Dai?" Seongyong suddenly turned his head and glared fiercely at Yang Kai, his eyes filled with an ominous light, as if Yang Kai dared to utter a single word, he would immediately lose his life. "I've only known Miss Dai-Yu for a little over 2 months. Miss Dai-Yu is such an outstanding beauty, I'm not worthy of her." "You better." Seongyong snorted. "If you dare have any ideas about her, I'll tear you to pieces." "I wouldn't dare. I'll give you a task." Seongyong's expression was dignified. Regardless of whether Yang Kai was willing or not, he ordered, "Keep an eye on Xiao Dai. If anyone dares to bother her, tell me immediately and I'll deal with them. Do you hear me?" Yang Kai nodded silently. Seongyong showed a satisfied expression. He reached out and touched the wound on his face. Feeling the pain, he let out a hiss and walked back. After taking a few steps, he suddenly turned around and said, "Right, there's one more thing. Remember what you said last time?" Yang Kai was puzzled. "What did I say?" Seongyong said, "Last time you said that the income from this land and your land would belong to me. Since your land doesn't have much income, forget it. I can get 20 heaven opening pills from this land every year. Remember to give them to me later." 20 pills? Yang Kai couldn't help but stare. This was obviously nonsense. Although this land wasn't small, Seongyong usually lacked care and was wholeheartedly devoted to Dai-Yu. Apart from the annual wages he received as a handyman, how much extra income could there be? 20 pills was absolutely impossible. This was obviously extortion. Just now, Yang Kai had some admiration for his infatuation, but now it seemed that this hateful person was indeed hateful. He also couldn't be bothered to argue about it. With his current wealth, 20 heaven opening pills really wasn't much. Seongyong had just left when Dai-Yu appeared. She looked at Yang Kai apologetically and said, "I'm sorry, little brother Yang Kai. I've caused you trouble. It's not your fault." Yang Kai waved his hand. The current situation was all caused by Ju Zheng. If there was anyone to blame, it could only be blamed on Zhu Zheng. He turned around curiously. Xiangyong said you saved his life. Dai Yu smiled bitterly. It's not that exaggerated. It was just a small matter. When he first came to the Fire Spirit Land as a servant, he made some mistakes and was punished. He almost died. I just casually fed him a healing spirit pill. The reason he was able to survive was because he had a good foundation. It had nothing to do with me. After that, he became like this. If I had known this would happen, I wouldn't have meddled in other people's business. Yang Kai nodded in understanding. Little Dai, you are also benevolent. Actually, his nature is not bad. It's just that his personality is a little overbearing and bad. Dai Yu sighed, and he has a one-track mind. Yang Kai smiled. Little Dai, haven't you thought about it? Dai Yu glanced at him. Don't make fun of me. She turned around and walked back to her orchard, too lazy to talk to Yang Kai. Since that day, Xiangyong came almost every day and was beaten up every day. However, he enjoyed it so much that Yang Kai gradually got used to it. Sometimes, Xiangyong would leave after being beaten up. Sometimes, he would stay and chat with Yang Kai. It was just to find out if anyone had harassed Dai Yu while he was away. On this day, Yang Kai was taking care of the fruit trees when he heard another sound. Then, someone landed nearby. Yang Kai thought it was Xiangyong again, so he didn't bother to look back and instead focused on taking care of the fruit trees. Who would have thought that the other party would not leave? Yang Kai turned around suspiciously, but upon seeing who it was, he quickly turned around and cupped his fists. Greetings, Senior Du. This time, it was not Xiangyong, but Du Rufeng. Du Rufeng was no longer cold and arrogant. At this moment, he was smiling like a spring breeze. When I saw it from above, I thought it was you. So I came down to have a look. Sure enough, it was you. Master, are you looking for me for something? Yang Kai asked. I'm not looking for you. I'm just patrolling the herb gardens today. The chief steward will be here in a few days, so I'm checking in advance to avoid any mistakes, Du Rufeng explained. Yang Kai showed a look of understanding. He had been here for a few months and knew most of the information about the Kikichiao land. Each orchard had a small steward like Zhu Zheng, who was in charge of each orchard. Above him, there was a chief steward who was in charge of the entire Chichiao land's orchard. He was directly under the Lord of Heaven and only answered to him. His position was no lower than that of the Earth Protector. Then we should be more careful. Yang Kai answered casually. He wasn't familiar with Du Rufeng. He only helped when Du Rufeng collected the red sky golden flame. He didn't know why Du Rufeng came to talk to him. Is this a new place? When Du Rufeng asked, he glanced at General Sai Chen who was lying on Yang Kai's head. The last time he saw him, he thought that Yang Kai had offended General Sai Chen and was punishing him. Who knew that the supremacy would say that General Sai Chen liked it? Now that he took a closer look, he realized that was indeed the case. General Sai Chen was lying on the ground with his eyes closed. He looked relaxed and happy. He was both amused and curious. He didn't know what made Yang Kai so important to him. Yes. Yang Kai nodded. After the last time, Steward Chow brought me here and gave me this orchard. He said that it was Master Du's idea. Du Rufeng said, yes, it was my idea. You have made a great contribution, so you should be rewarded. It seems that Zhu Zheng wasn't careless and found a good place for you. Yang Kai said, the 5,000 Genesis pills were already a great reward. Master, you gave me this piece of land. I'm so grateful. Du Rufeng waved his hand. You should be rewarded for your contribution. You deserve it. But I don't want it. Now, it even involved that idiot Xiangyong and offended him for no reason. However, after probing a little, Yang Kai was sure that the reward was indeed 5,000 Genesis pills. Zhu Zheng didn't take any of it. How is it? Du Rufeng suddenly looked at Yang Kai. Are you interested in coming to my side and helping me? Yang Kai was stunned. What do you mean, Master? Du Rufeng put his hands behind his back. If you come to my side, you will no longer be a servant. You will be a disciple of Kikichiao. Yang Kai couldn't help but widen his eyes. He felt as if a meat pie had fallen from the sky and hit his head, making him dizzy. The servants of the fire spirit land had the lowest status, but they had the most work to do every day. Which servant didn't want to break away from this status? However, only by breaking through to the heaven-opening realm would one be able to achieve such a thing, so the miscellaneous workers had worked hard for countless years to accumulate heaven-opening pills in order to buy heaven-opening materials from the market. Who would have thought that such a good thing would actually fall into Yang Kai's lap today? With Du Rufeng's status in the fire spirit land, since he had opened his mouth, he definitely wasn't lying. In other words, as long as Yang Kai agreed, he could immediately break away from his status as a servant and become a disciple of Kikichiao. This would definitely be very convenient for him to obtain the Genesis pills recipe. But this was too strange. Although he had contributed greatly last time, he had already been rewarded with 5,000 Genesis pills and a piece of land. Now, Du Rufeng had given him such a great gift. What was he thinking? Could it be that someone had seen through his wood elemental energy? Yang Kai was secretly on guard. As if seeing his hesitation, Du Rufeng smiled and said, "This isn't the Venerable's idea, it's my own. The Scarlet Heaven Golden Flame I collected last time was given to me by the Venerable, and in the next 10 years, it's a crucial time for me to break through to grade 4. With this Scarlet Heaven Golden Flame, I'll be able to take a big step forward on my path to grade 4. So, can you understand how important it is to me?" After pausing for a moment, he said, "But you can rest assured. Although the Venerable hasn't said anything, since I brought this up, I naturally have the confidence to convince the Venerable to remove your servant status." Chapter 3868. I've always been the kind of person who reciprocates with peaches. That Scarlet Firmament Golden Flame is very important to me, and now that I've obtained it, I naturally won't forget your hard work. Du Rufeng smiled at Yang Kai. "How about it? Are you interested in coming? I don't dare say anything else, but I'm confident I can help you reach the 3rd stage within 300 years. Yang Kai exclaimed, "Third stage splitting heavens." The 3rd stage splitting heavens could be said to be the greatest dream of a servant, but so far, no servant had been able to accomplish it. After all, condensing one's strength required far too many materials, and each one was extremely valuable. Servants simply couldn't save enough heaven-splitting pills. Of course, Yang Kai's goal was definitely not limited to the 3rd stage, but as a servant, he naturally had to react as a servant should. Du Rufeng nodded. "I know you're lucky to have condensed wood element strength above the 4th stage, but you should know that this is just a moment of luck. Even if you have wood element strength above the 4th stage, without other high-grade materials, your future in splitting heavens will be limited." "I understand." Yang Kai nodded. "It's good that you understand. I'm just afraid you'll feel too good about yourself and have too high of an expectation. In the end, you'll achieve nothing. Many thanks for Master's kindness." Yang Kai cupped his fists, but Disciple has thought about it and feels it's better to work in the orchard for the time being. "Why?" Du Rufeng was slightly stunned, not having expected Yang Kai to reject his proposal. After all, this was an irresistible temptation for any servant. First, Disciple has only been in the fire spirit land for 3 months. Although I've made some contributions, I've also received a proper reward. If the other servants learn of this, they'll complain that Master is unfair. At that time, everyone will be impetuous, and taking care of the orchard will be delayed. "Who would dare?" Du Rufeng sneered. Yang Kai said, "Not openly, but privately, I don't know." Du Rufeng pondered for a moment before nodding. "Continue." "Second, Disciple wants to temper himself in the orchard for a while. When the time is right, Disciple will submit to Master. At that time, no one will say anything, and Disciple will be able to help Master better. Unlike now, Disciple can only rely on Master's wings and achieve nothing." Du Rufeng looked at Yang Kai. "It's rare for you to have such a heart. Since that's the case, it's fine. When you've thought it through, you can come find me." "Thank you, Master." After saying a few more words of encouragement to Yang Kai, Du Rufeng continued to patrol the orchard. He had just found a way to make money, earning several thousand heaven-opening pills every month. Why would he go follow Du Rufeng for no reason? If he really did, then this source of income would be cut off. Du Rufeng had promised him that he would reach third-grade heaven opening within 300 years. The materials needed to reach third-grade heaven opening pills were only worth around 110,000 heaven opening pills. He could easily save up this amount in a few years, so why would he need Du Rufeng's guarantee? The following days were very calm, but Yang Kai could clearly feel that the atmosphere in the orchard had become tense. Perhaps it was because the head steward was coming to inspect, but all the servants obediently stayed in their own territories, carefully taking care of the fruit trees, afraid that something would go wrong. Even Xiong Yong didn't dare to leave his territory. Zhu Zheng had probably given him some kind of order. When the time came, the orchard's restrictions were activated and everyone was forced to leave. Yang Kai didn't stop and went straight back to the servants' room. After waiting for a while, Old Fang and Dai Yu rushed over and went straight to the market square. In the market square, they were busy again, collecting the insects from the other 6 spirit lands. At night, in the hut in Yang Kai, just like last month, the 3 of them sat on the ground and divided the spoils. However, the harvest this time was much more than the last time. Last time, the representatives of the spiritual lands had their doubts and didn't dare to buy too many at once. Except for Yu Xueping, who was full of courage, the others only bought 600 insects at most. However, after tasting the sweetness once, they didn't hesitate anymore. This time, they bought more than 12,000 insects from all over the spirit lands. Including the insects they bought this month in the fire spirit lands, they had about 15,000 insects. After feeding the Great General for a whole day and night, even with the Great General's appetite, when he left Yang Kai, he was a little full. He walked unsteadily, as if he was drunk. After deducting the expenses, the income this month was nearly 10,000 opening heaven pills. According to the previous agreement, Old Fang and Dai Yu each took 10%, which was 1,000, and the remaining 8,000 went to Yang Kai. Old Fang's eyes were red, not from jealousy, but from excitement. He thought about how he had worked hard to accumulate opening heaven pills for hundreds of years. Every time he used one, he had to be very careful, but now he was just sitting there and collecting money. He couldn't help but feel emotional and choke with emotion. Yang Kai laughed and patted him on the shoulder. Old Fang, why are you crying? This is just the beginning. The good days are still ahead. Old Fang wiped the corners of his eyes and said, I'm crying. Why didn't you come to the fire spirit lands a few hundred years earlier? If you came earlier, this old man wouldn't have to work so hard to condense the 2nd rank. If this old man condensed the 4th rank and advanced to the 4th rank, he would be able to open the heavens. Unfortunately, now that the tone has been set, there's no chance to change it. I wasn't even born a few hundred years ago. Yang Kai sneered, and you're talking nonsense again. How rare are the 4th rank materials in the fire spirit lands? Even if you had enough opening heaven pills, you still wouldn't be able to buy them. You should be content if you could condense the 2nd rank. Old Fang nodded, that's true, I'm content. His original goal was to condense the 2nd rank and open the heavens. He had worked hard to accumulate opening heaven pills for this goal, so what was there to be dissatisfied with now? Dai Yu smiled from the side. According to our current income, we only need 1 to 2 opening heaven pills to buy a set of materials, but we still can't compare with little brother Yang Kai. Who can compare with him? Old Fang smiled bitterly. When Yang Kai had received 5,000 opening heaven pills as a reward, he had thought it was enough, but now Yang Kai's monthly income was 8,000. How about I give you another 10%? Yang Kai looked at them. Dai Yu and Old Fang looked at each other and waved their hands. No, 10% is 10%. If we need opening heaven pills in the future, we can borrow them from you. That's fine too. Yang Kai nodded. Suddenly, he remembered something and asked, right, if the workers buy materials and want to condense them, what about the orchard? They can't take care of it and absorb it at the same time, right? Dai Yu explained, they can apply for seclusion. If you want a horse to run, you have to let the horse eat grass. Chichiao Land is quite humane about this. Old Fang nodded, that's right, as long as you need to absorb opening heaven pills, you can apply for seclusion. Of course, it depends on the local managers. If too many people go into seclusion at once, there will be no one to take care of the orchard. Dayu said, that's why this matter still depends on whether the managers approve or not. Even if you apply, you might have to wait for 10 or 20 years or even longer before it's your turn. I once applied to go into seclusion and waited for 50 years. Yang Kai laughed, if I apply, Zhuzheng definitely won't approve. After chatting for a while, the three of them dispersed. Yang Kai and Old Fang were going to visit the city again. They had made a lot of money this time and wanted to take advantage of the fact that the city wasn't closed yet to have some fun. Since Dayu didn't want to go, the two of them didn't force her. Drinking and having fun really wasn't suitable for women. When they returned from the city, Yang Kai went straight to Dayu's hut and knocked on the door. Dayu was a little surprised and invited him in, bringing him a cup of tea and asking curiously, "What's the matter?" "Nothing." Yang Kai grinned meaningfully and mysteriously took out something from his space ring. "I just wanted to give you something, see if you like it." Dayu blushed slightly and asked, "You came all the way here to give me something? What is it?" "Take a look for yourself." Yang Kai grinned meaningfully. Dayu glared at him for a moment before looking down and seeing a delicate box placed in front of her. It wasn't a box made of pure wood used to catch insects, but rather another kind that looked familiar. Realizing what was inside this box, she looked up at Yang Kai and asked, "You didn't buy that, did you?" "You guessed." Yang Kai was stunned. Dayu said, "I've been here for 1,000 years and have gone to that place to buy things. I recognize this box." As he spoke, he opened the box. Inside the box was a strange object that was constantly twisting and changing its shape. It was filled with metal elemental energy. Untainted golden dew. Dayu sighed slightly. "It really is this. Why did you buy it?" Yang Kai smiled and said, "We agreed before that I would buy it for you in the future. That was just a joke. No, this is too precious, you should take it back." Dayu shook her head. A third-grade material was worth 16,000 heaven-opening pills in Heaven Opening Hall. Every time she went to the city, she could only take a look and never thought she would one day be able to buy it, but now it was sitting right in front of her. Saying so, she closed the box and pushed it in front of Yang Kai. "Since I'm giving it to you, I won't take it back." Yang Kai pushed the box back and said seriously, "If I didn't have the financial resources, I wouldn't have thought of it, but since I have enough heaven-opening pills, I naturally have to fulfill my promise. Moreover, when I first came to the Fire Spirit Land, you helped me a lot, so consider this a gift of thanks." Dayu still wanted to refuse, but Yang Kai said, "It's useless for me to take it back, I can't just give it back, right? Keep it for yourself, there will be a time when you need it in the future." Yang Kai shook his head. "My ambition is not to become a third-grade treasure." Dayu was slightly stunned. Chapter 3869. In the entire Chichiaoland, not only was the third grade splitting the heavens the limit of all the servants, but it was also the limit of most of the Chichiaoland's disciples. Apart from Du Rufeng, who was favored by the Venerables, who could obtain materials above the third grade, there were only a few people who had the chance to achieve splitting the heavens above the third grade. But now, Yang Kai said that his ambition was not to reach the third grade. Dayu was not a fool and naturally understood what he meant. Thinking back, when she first came to the Fire Spirit Land, she seemed to have the same ambition. Unfortunately, the torrent of the flowing time Great Emperor had smoothed out her edges and she no longer had the drive of the past. She didn't know if many years later, Kai Yang would also accept his fate like she did now. "Where did you get so many splitting heavens pills?" After Dayu asked, she suddenly remembered that Yang Kai had earned 8,000 spirit stones this month and had received a reward of 5,000, which added up to 13,000 spirit stones. Adding in his previous 2 months' income, it should be enough. Even if it wasn't enough, he could borrow some from Old Fang. "You don't need to worry about that." Yang Kai laughed. "Or are you like me and want to reach a higher grade, so you don't care about this third grade?" "How could I not care? Old Fang said before that our path is set and there is no chance to change it. It's just that," seeing that she was still hesitating, Yang Kai said, "Don't think too much, I don't mean anything by it. It's just that I promised before. Now that I have the ability, I naturally have to fulfill it. I didn't expect to be able to buy it so quickly. Dai Yu sighed lightly. Alright, I'll accept it, but just consider it a loan from me. I get a lot of heaven-opening pills from you every month, so it's not like I can't pay you back. Pausing for a moment, she solemnly said, Little brother, thank you. Yang Kai laughed. I didn't say thank you when you helped me before. Dai Yu said, how is that the same? I didn't pay much when I helped you. This thing is worth 16,000 splitting heaven's pills. Yang Kai slowly shook his head. Since ancient times, there have been many people who add flowers to embroidery, but very few who offer help in times of need. To me, your help at that time cannot be measured by the heaven-opening pill. At the same time, in another room in the village where the handyman's quarters were located, two people were sitting across from each other. The table was covered with food and wine, and one of them was eagerly urging the other to drink. He enthusiastically picked up the food and said with a fawning smile, Steward Chow, try this. I specially bought all of this from the market square. Zhu Zheng drank the wine and ate the dishes as they came. He slowly put down his chopsticks and said, You must have spent a lot of money on this table, right? Xiong said, I didn't spend much, as long as Steward Chow is happy. He cursed in his heart that it was really not easy to invite him to a meal. When he came back from the orchard, he wanted to invite him, but Zhu Zheng ignored him. He went to find him several times in a row. Only then did Zhu Zheng tell him that he could drink and eat, but he did not want to go to the market square. He was not in the mood and could just stay in the handyman's room. What could Xiong do? Naturally, he went to the market square to order a table of food and wine and brought it back. After 3 rounds of wine and 5 dishes, they chatted casually. The atmosphere gradually warmed up. Xiong struck while the iron was hot and said, Steward Chow, what do you think I should do about this matter? Zhu Zheng picked up some food and ate. As he ate, he said, I'm sorry about this matter, but I can't do anything about it. Master Du said that I have to find a better place for that guy. Otherwise, I won't be able to explain it to Master Du. Xiong almost cursed. Master Du asked you to find a better place for Yang Kai. The orchard was so big, why did you have to change it to his place? He was unhappy in his heart, and even the expression on his face looked a little ferocious. Since Lord Du has spoken, we should indeed do as he says. However, Steward Ju, can we transfer him to another place? I have taken care of that piece of land for so many years, more or less, I have some feelings for it. I am reluctant to leave. Zhu Zheng sneered in his heart. He knew that Xiong was not attached to that land, but to the neighbor next door. He waved his hand and said, There's no other way. If it was a few days ago, there might be some possibility. But today, we can't do anything to him. Why? Xiong stared. Does that guy have 3 heads and 6 arms? Even Steward Chow can't do anything to him. He doesn't have 3 heads and 6 arms. Zhu Zheng smiled bitterly. But that guy made a great contribution last time and won Master Du's favor. A few days ago, when Master Du was patrolling the orchard, he went down and said a few words to him. Now that Master Du knows where he is, if I change him again, how can I explain it when Master Du asks about it? Master Du went down and talked to him? Xiong was stunned. He couldn't understand why Yang Kai was so lucky. After a moment of silence, he poured more wine and said in a low voice, Steward Chow, if we can't do anything to him, we can do something to others. I don't want to go back to my original land. You can find a way to transfer me to the neighboring land. That shouldn't be difficult, right? Zhu Zheng said, there has to be a reason to transfer people. Others are doing well. Why should I transfer them? Xiong was speechless. Is this the first time you've done this? It's not like you haven't done it before. Moreover, as the manager of the orchard, it's just a matter of a word to transfer people. Who can say anything? It's clear that he doesn't want to help. Looking at Zhu Zheng's hateful face, Xiong couldn't help but feel angry. Zhu Zheng sneered. Instead of worrying about that land, you should worry about that person. If the land is gone, you can change it. But if the person is gone, how can you change it? What person? Xiong was confused. What person are you talking about? Zhu Zheng looked at him coldly. Xiong blinked. Xiao Dai. What's wrong with Xiao Dai? Suddenly he tensed up and sprang up with a fierce look on his face. What happened to Xiao Dai? Zhu Zheng chuckled. What can happen to Miss Dai Yu? Not only is she fine, but she's also living a good life right now. Xiong Yong frowned and stared at him. He felt that there was a hidden meaning in his words, but he was disgusted by his pretentious attitude. Thinking of his several evasions just now, he couldn't help but say coldly, Steward Chow, if you have something to say, just say it. I'm a straightforward person. I don't understand your twists and turns. Zhu Zheng pointed at him with a distressed look. It's because you're too innocent. You don't even know that you've been deceived. Who dares to deceive me? Xiong Yong was furious. Forget it. Let's not talk about this. Let's drink. Drink my ass. Xiong Yong kicked out and knocked over the table in front of him. The wine and dishes splashed out, almost drenching Zhu Zheng's face. Fortunately, he dodged quickly. Xiong Yong, what are you doing? Zhu Zheng was furious. Although he knew that Xiong Yong was a rough person, he didn't expect him to be so rough. Xiong Yong's expression was ferocious and unruly. Steward Chow, I invited you to drink out of goodwill, but you're making me feel uncomfortable. That's not right, is it? I'm not the one who's making you feel uncomfortable. It's someone else. Why are you so angry at me? Xiong Yong shook his head. I don't care. Steward Chow, you have to make yourself clear today. Zhu Zheng sneered. Are you sure you want to know? Xiong Yong glared at him as if he wanted to eat him. His meaning was clear. Zhu Zheng gritted his teeth. Fine, fine, fine. Since you want to know, I'll let you know. I hope you won't regret it when the time comes. Without further explanation, he took out a token and infused it with his own energy. He waved the token in front of him and said coldly, Open your eyes wide and see for yourself. As soon as he finished speaking, a projection of an image immediately appeared in the air between the two of them. There was nothing special about the image. It was just a house, and it was the most ordinary house in the servants' quarters. There were at least 300 houses like this in the servants' quarters, if not 500. Xiong Yong recognized it at a glance. Isn't this Xiao Dai's house? You have good eyesight. Zhu Zheng snorted. What does Steward Chow want me to see? Xiong Yong didn't understand. Take your time and wait. You'll know in a while. Zhu Zheng didn't want to waste time with him. Xiong Yong looked at him for a while. He figured that he wouldn't be able to get anything out of him, so he rubbed his chin and watched carefully. However, he didn't find anything strange. He was bored. After waiting for more than an hour, the door of the house in the image suddenly opened. Xiong Yong was startled and looked at it expectantly. But in the next moment, the expectation in his eyes turned into shock and then anger. His eyes burned with anger and he looked like a volcano about to erupt. Yang Kai. Xiong Yong gritted his teeth and shouted, Why did this boy come out of Xiao Dai's house at this time? In the image, when Yang Kai came out, he seemed to be in a good mood, a smile on his face. Behind him, Dai Yu seemed to be saying something to him, causing her face to blush. Yang Kai didn't even turn around and just waved his hand. Zhu Zheng looked on coldly from the side and clicked his tongue, a man and a woman alone in the middle of the night. What do you think this boy was doing just now? TSK, he's only been in the fire spirit land for a few months and has already won Master Du's pity and the favor of a beauty. How enviable. Xiong Yong's face twitched and the anger in his eyes instantly turned into endless killing intent. Bastard. He turned around and walked towards the door with his axe in hand, full of killing intent. I'm going to kill him. Zhu Zheng coldly said, Handamen are not allowed to fight in private. Those who injure others will be grounded for 3 to 100 years depending on the severity of the injury. Those who kill will be killed without mercy. Do you want to be buried with him? Xiong Yong's rushing figure couldn't help but pause. Although he was furious at this moment, he still had a trace of reason. He knew that Zhu Zheng was right. If he really went to kill Yang Kai, he would definitely be buried with him. At that time, no one would be able to save him. After 3 breaths of time, Xiong Yong said, then I'll go beat him up first. Zhu Zheng said, 3 years of confinement is inevitable. While you're in confinement for 3 years, This boy and Miss Dai you can do whatever they want. Xiangyong turned around and glared at Zhu Zheng. Zhu Zheng sneered, "What are you looking at me for? I'm not the one who touched your woman." Chapter 3870. Do you want me to sit back and do nothing? Xiangyong shouted angrily, his expression constantly changing. His expression was ferocious and twisted, and it was obvious that he was fighting a battle in his heart. Seeing this, Zhu Zheng said, "Xiangyong, you have to be calm at a time like this. You may ruin everything if you act rashly. It's easy to say, but it's useless." Xiangyong said in a low voice, "Steward Chow, just pretend you don't know anything about what happened today. I'm going to kill him right now. It's not like you have to do it yourself if you want him dead." Zhu Zheng sneered. Xiangyong, who was about to go out, immediately stopped and turned to look at Zhu Zheng. Zhu Zheng's expression changed. "Don't take my words seriously when I'm drunk. It's late, so I'm going back to rest." Saying this, he was about to rush out of the door. Xiangyong swung the axe in his hand and chopped down in front of Zhu Zheng. His burly figure blocked the door and looked down at Zhu Zheng. Zhu Zheng was not afraid and narrowed his eyes slightly. "Xiangyong, are you going to fight with me? I drank too much and am a little delirious." "You look like you're the one with a brain problem." Xiangyong said in a low voice, "Master, you're in the heaven-opening realm. I admit that I'm not your match. If we really fight, I'll only be humiliated. However, Xiao Dai's matter is closely related to me. If you have a good plan, please tell me. I'll be very grateful." "What if I don't say it?" Zhu Zheng looked at him coldly. Xiangyong laughed sinisterly. "Master, although you're in the heaven-opening realm, you're only in the 1st grade. If I risk my life, I can probably bite off 2 to 3 kilograms of your flesh. You're crazy." Zhu Zheng's expression changed. Xiangyong rubbed his head and said with a ferocious expression, "Master, please teach me." Zhu Zheng did not speak and looked at him. There was only determination and ruthlessness in Xiangyong's eyes. After a long time, Zhu Zheng said, "Xiangyong, why are you doing this? Since Miss Dai Yu has no interest in you, why do you keep pestering her?" "That's my business. Master Steward, you don't have to worry about it." Sigh. Zhu Zheng sighed. "Originally, it was not my place to say anything about this matter, but seeing how infatuated you are, I can give you some advice, but..." Xiangyong said, "Master Steward, don't worry. This matter has nothing to do with you. No matter what the final result is, I will bear all responsibility." "Very good." Zhu Zheng nodded. "In that case, come closer." Xiangyong hurried over. Zhu Zheng lowered his voice and told him in detail for a while. Xiangyong's expression kept changing as he listened. He secretly lamented that Zhu Zheng was really vicious and merciless. If this was true, Yang Kai would die without a doubt. Moreover, it would be an effortless death. After a while, Zhu Zheng said in a low voice, "This matter involves too many people. If it's exposed, you won't have a good ending. Think carefully." Xiangyong chuckled. "Master Steward, this is a good idea. If I don't do it, I'll be letting you down." "What does this have to do with me?" Zhu Zheng was shocked. Xiangyong hurriedly slapped his mouth. Yes. This has nothing to do with Master Steward. This was all my idea. Come. Let's drink." The table had been kicked over. How could they drink? Zhu Zheng flicked his sleeves and said, "It's late. I'm going back to rest." Xiangyong said, "Then I'll leave the matter of the day after tomorrow to Steward Chow." Zhu Zheng staggered. He didn't know whether this idea of his was a blessing or a curse for him, but it was too late to regret it now. Looking at Xiangyong's expression, it was clear that he had to do it. He could only secretly pray that he hit Xiangyong's weak spot so that he could never rise again. Life in the handyman's quarters was not exciting. After returning from Dai Yu's place, Yang Kai meditated and rested. The next day, he dragged Old Fang to the market, mainly to broaden his horizons. Although he had a general understanding of the situation in the market, there were still some strange things in many stalls, all of which were brought out by the handymen from their respective Chenkuan worlds. In order to buy the 3rd-grade pure golden dew for Dai Yu, He went bankrupt and even owed Old Fang some heaven-opening pills. However, he was not in a hurry. In any case, he could earn a large number of heaven-opening pills next month. The food and drinks in the market were all on Old Fang's head, so Old Fang naturally did not bicker with him. This time, he even mysteriously brought him to a place. That place was extremely secluded. From the outside, it looked inconspicuous, but once one entered, one would know that there was a universe inside. The people who came here not only included the odd job workers from the odd job room, but also some disciples from the Seven Openings land. Many of them were wearing seven-colored clothes, and they were hugging women left and right as they enjoyed themselves. Yang Kai was extremely shocked. He pulled Old Fang aside and said, "There's actually such a place in the market." Old Fang sneered, "What's so strange about it? Since ancient times, this kind of place can be seen everywhere. These girls, who are they?" Yang Kai looked around. Old Fang sighed, "They're all handymen from various spiritual lands. Everyone is trying to make a living. In the past, they didn't have much ability, but now that they have, they naturally want to help." Yang Kai looked at him with a strange expression. This was the first time he heard someone speak of doing something so noble. He frowned slightly and said, "The handymen shouldn't have much money." Old Fang said, "That's why, most of the people here are Chichiaolan's disciples. There are very, very few handymen who come here to seek pleasure. Although this place is not specially opened for Chichiaolan's disciples, it's basically relying on them to survive." It was indeed as Old Fang said. Most of the people Yang Kai saw here were Chichiaolan's disciples who wore colorful robes. There were only a few handymen who came here, including the two of them. "Don't talk nonsense. Hurry up and find a girl to take care of." Old Fang gave him a push and pointed at a group of more than 10 girls. "If you take a fancy to any of them, just bring them upstairs." After he finished speaking, he went upstairs and knocked on the door of a room. A moment later, the door opened and a jade-like hand reached out and pulled Old Fang inside. Yang Kai was dumbfounded. He stood in place and scratched his head. He looked to the side and saw that the 10 girls were also looking at him curiously, but none of them had any intention of coming over to greet him. This place was mainly maintained by Chichiaolan's disciples. Moreover, it was only open for 3 days every month. The girls all knew that if they wanted to make money, it was best to make money from those wearing colorful robes. If a handyman like Yang Kai came in, most people would ignore him unless he took the initiative to talk to them. It was good that no one cared. He walked to a table at the side and called for the handyman. He ordered a table of food and wine and drank by himself. However, it had to be said that although there was a sex trade here, it didn't have much of a prostitute atmosphere. It was more like a tea house. If it wasn't for waiting for Old Fang, Yang Kai would have left long ago. After waiting for a long time, he still didn't come out. The food and wine were all changed. In the end, a girl couldn't stand it anymore and walked over. "Brother, are you waiting for your companion?" Yang Kai nodded. The girl pursed her lips and smiled. "Then you don't have to wait any longer. I heard from the senior sisters that every time your companion comes, he will stay the night here." Yang Kai almost cursed out loud. With a dark face, he thanked her and paid for the food and wine. Just as he was about to leave, the girl suddenly reached out and grabbed Yang Kai's sleeve. Yang Kai turned to look at her and saw that her face was red. He couldn't help but ask, "Junior sister, do you need something?" The girl lowered her head. "Brother, did you come here just to drink?" Yang Kai wasn't an idiot. He naturally understood what she meant. Carefully sizing her up, he found that this girl had delicate features and didn't have the slightest bit of a prostitute's aura. He couldn't help laughing. "I came here with someone. I've never been to a place like this before." The girl's voice was soft. "There's a first time for everything. Brother, do you want to try?" As she spoke, her head was almost buried in her chest, and her face was as red as fire. Yang Kai was speechless. He knew that this girl was either shy by nature or had only come out a few times and wasn't too open. Just as he was thinking this, the girl said, "I won't hide it from brother. Junior sister, this is also my first time." Yang Kai frowned and asked, "Junior sister, why did you come here?" The girl closed her mouth and didn't answer. However, Yang Kai had already been here for several months, so he naturally knew about the hard lives of the workers. They were paid 3 heaven opening pills a year, but even if they wanted to buy a set of second-grade materials, it would still cost 1,500 to 600. If he wanted to quickly advance to heaven opening, he had to find some other way. He sighed inwardly, knowing that old Fang was right. If it weren't for the fact that life was hard, who would come to this place? At this moment, a tall and sturdy man suddenly walked in from outside. His eyes swept over the area and fixed on Yang Kai, and he walked over in surprise. Sensing movement, Yang Kai turned his head and was also stunned. "Brother Fang? Why are you here?" Fang Tai looked at Yang Kai curiously. "Did you come to the wrong place? What does Brother Fang want to say?" Yang Kai frowned slightly. "Nothing." Fang Tai slowly shook his head, probably because he didn't want to talk to him anymore. Looking around, he then turned to the young woman beside Kai Yang and smiled. "Junior sister, you need to have a good eye for people. Some people, even if you receive them, I'm afraid they won't be paid. At that time, you'll have to work for nothing." The girl forced a laugh. "Brother, you must be joking." Fang Tai said, "I'm not joking. The person you brought here is a newcomer. He's only been here for a few months and hasn't even been paid his salary yet. How could he pay you?" The woman looked at Kai Yang strangely. Kai Yang's performance just now was not like that of a newcomer. That table of food and drinks he had happily paid for, no more, no less. This Fang is different. "I'll make sure to satisfy junior sister later." Saying so, he reached out and grabbed the girl's arm. The girl couldn't dodge and was caught, quickly turning her head to look at Yang Kai with a pleading expression. She was more willing to receive Yang Kai, otherwise, she wouldn't have taken the initiative to talk to him. But to her disappointment, Yang Kai just glanced at her and cupped his hands. "Then I won't disturb Brother Fang. Goodbye." "Humph." Fang Tai coldly snorted. Yang Kai stepped out, but he could clearly feel a pair of eyes staring at him from behind. Chapter 3871. Stop looking. Why bother with this piece of trash? This brother will take you to have some fun. Yang Kai stopped in his tracks and turned around. He walked up to Fang Tai and looked up at him. "Brother Fang, did you eat the wrong medicine today?" Fang Tai said, "This Fang is not sick. Why would I eat medicine? If you're not sick, why are you spouting nonsense and insulting me for no reason?" Fang Tai was extremely astonished. "When did I insult you?" "Oh, you said that piece of trash, not you." This Fang was referring to someone else. "But if you insist on sticking to me, then I can't do anything about it." Yang Kai stared at him. Fang Tai's eyes were full of ridicule and mockery. Yang Kai nodded. It seems that Brother Fang is seriously ill. Fang Tai was about to say something when he saw a fist rapidly growing in front of him. Immediately after, his head buzzed as if he had been struck by a powerful force. He flew backwards, feeling dizzy and seeing stars. The woman beside Fang Tai was stunned, staring blankly at Yang Kai. In her field of vision, Yang Kai was still in his punching posture. If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, she wouldn't have dared to believe that this seemingly amiable senior brother actually had such a fiery temper. Just because of a disagreement, he attacked and injured someone. Could it be that he didn't know the consequences of doing so? Less than 3 breaths after Yang Kai punched, the women in the hall all used their movement techniques and fled out the door. In the blink of an eye, all of them were gone. However, there were still a few Chichiao Land disciples looking over with interest. How many years had it been since a servant dared to make a move in private? Today, they were finally able to watch a show. On the other side, Fang Tai staggered to his feet, only to feel that his mouth and nose were sticky. Wiping his hands, he found that they were all covered in blood. Raising his head, he glared at Kai Yang in disbelief. "You dare to hit me?" He had also been beaten into a daze. He had never thought that Yang Kai would attack him. Otherwise, with his strength, he would not have been defeated by Yang Kai in one move. For a moment, humiliation and anger surged in his heart, and his aura fluctuated wildly. "You dare to scold me, why wouldn't I dare to hit you?" Yang Kai sneered. "Very good." Fang Tai roared angrily and kicked away the table and chair in his way. Then, like an ancient divine spirit, he rushed to the front of Yang Kai. His 2 fists, which were as big as casseroles, turned into shadows of fists that covered the sky and covered Yang Kai. Fang Tai was also a newcomer who had just arrived outside of heaven and earth. His strength was on par with Yang Kai's, so this fight was actually a close match. At the side, a few disciples of the Kikichiaoland who were dressed in 7-colored robes were watching the show and cheered loudly. However, the 2 of them had only fought for a dozen breaths of time when a group of people came in from outside. The leader of the group had his hands behind his back and looked around. He narrowed his eyes and shouted angrily, "All of you, stop!" Yang Kai and Fang Tai, who were in the midst of fighting, ignored him and continued to fight. "You're revolting." The leader was furious. He waved his hand and the disciples of the Kikichiaoland on both sides threw out ropes. These ropes were made of an unknown material and wrapped around Yang Kai and Fang Tai's bodies like snakes. In the blink of an eye, the 2 of them were tied up like rice dumplings. Yang Kai struggled but was unable to break free. Instead, the strength of the ropes increased, causing him to feel uncomfortable all over. "You 2 are quite bold to fight in private. Don't you know the rules of the Chichiaoland?" After tying up the 2 of them, the leader walked in front of Yang Kai and Fang Tai. He looked at one and then looked at the other with a cold expression. "Brother." Fang Tai also came back to his senses at this time. Just now, he had been hit by Yang Kai and was a bit angry. Otherwise, he wouldn't have dared to act so presumptuously. He knew that this matter was a bit serious and that one wrong move could cause him to be consigned to eternal damnation. He immediately begged for mercy. "Brother, this little brother has only been here for a few months and is not familiar with the rules of the Chichiaoland. Brother, can you consider this as this little brother's first offense and let me go? This little brother will be very grateful." "Humph." The leader coldly snorted, "Rules are rules. Who cares if this is your first offense or not? You'll suffer this time and know how to behave next time." Fang Tai panicked. "Brother, I'm innocent. This bastard hit me and I had no choice but to fight back. If you don't believe me, you can ask the other brothers over there. They saw everything clearly." The leader coldly looked at him. "I only know that when I came in, you were fighting with this brat. As for who made the first move, I have no interest in knowing. Take them away." After saying that, he turned and walked out. Fang Tai and Yang Kai, who were tied up like dumplings, were also taken behind. Fang Tai was still trying to explain something, but he was only reprimanded by a Chichiaoland disciple beside him. Seeing this, Yang Kai also gave up the idea of wasting his breath. On the 2nd floor, Old Fang's face was pale as he muttered, "It's over, it's over, it's over." He had naturally heard the commotion downstairs. When Yang Kai and Fang Tai had been fighting, he had hurriedly put on his clothes and rushed out, but he had still been a step too late. He could only watch as Yang Kai was tied up and taken away, unable to save him. The people who had taken away Yang Kai were the Chichiaoland's patrols. As a worker, he had no right to say anything in front of them. Thinking about it, the only person who could save Yang Kai was Zhu Zheng. As the manager of the orchard and a heaven-opening cultivator, if he was willing to step in, he should be able to help. Mentally preparing himself for a huge loss, Old Fang didn't even have time to tidy up his clothes as he hurriedly rushed to the fire spiritual land. In a simple and crude cell, dark and damp, Yang Kai and Fang Tai were locked inside, each occupying a corner of the cell. This cell was in the middle of the market, deep underground. It was casually built with some wood, so if Yang Kai wanted to, he could easily escape. However, neither he nor Fang Tai had the courage to do so. The Chichiaoland's disciples were standing guard outside, so what could they do even if they escaped? They would still be tied up and brought back. As such, even though there was no one watching over them, and even though their bindings had been undone, the 2 of them only occupied a corner of the cell, minding their own business. Accompanying Old Fang to visit a brothel only to end up in prison. Yang Kai was somewhat speechless. However, today's matter gave him a strange feeling. Although Fang Tai had wanted to draw a clear line between them because he had offended Zhu Zheng, there was no need for him to offend him for no reason, right? Fang Tai's actions today gave him the feeling that he was intentionally trying to anger him. But what good would that do for Fang Tai? In the end, he would end up the same as him, locked up here, and who knew what kind of punishment he would receive. He had heard old Fang say that the Chichiaoland's punishment for workers who made mistakes was quite harsh. If he didn't handle this matter well, he might end up locked up for 3 to 5 years. If he was really locked up for such a long time, it would be a huge loss. Once he was locked up here, his source of income would be cut off, and who knew how many heaven-opening pills he would lose. Thinking of this, Fang Tai became even more displeased. He coldly glanced over and saw that this guy was looking anxiously in a certain direction, his face full of anticipation. Yang Kai frowned slightly, not knowing what he was looking forward to. After an unknown amount of time, the sound of footsteps suddenly came from outside. Fang Tai, who was sitting cross-legged on the side, immediately stood up, and Yang Kai also listened attentively. Not long after, a person arrived in front of the cell, his eyes gloomy as he looked at the two people in the cell. "Master Steward!" Fang Tai exclaimed excitedly. "Steward Chow." Yang Kai cupped his fists slightly. Although he didn't get along well with Zhu Zheng, since the other party had the title of steward, he still had to show the proper etiquette, lest he caught something that could be used against him. "You two really give face to my fire spirit land chores room." Zhu Zhang gritted his teeth and pointed at the two people in the cell, a look of resentment on his face. "Fighting over a woman and coming to the market square? You two are good, you two are too good." Fang Tai awkwardly said, "It's a misunderstanding, Master Steward. Yang Kai and I weren't fighting over a woman, it was just that our hands were itchy and we casually swapped pointers." "Who knew that this would happen?" As he spoke, he turned his head and shot a look at Yang Kai. Yang Kai turned his head and pretended not to see. "You've been caught by the patrol and brought here, yet you still dare to say it's a misunderstanding," Zhu Zheng angrily shouted, "and the injury on your eye, do you think I'm blind?" Fang Tai reached out and covered the eye that Yang Kai had hit, not saying a word. Zhu Zheng snorted, "Do you know what punishment there is for a private fight between chores?" Fang Tai nervously asked, "What punishment?" 3 to 100 years of confinement. Zhu Zheng sneered, "Do you want 3 years or 100 years? Fang Tai was shocked and begged, "Master Steward, please save me." Zhu Zheng said, "But I happen to know the patrol leader who caught you, so I can speak to him. Seeing that you're both newcomers and this is your first offense, I'll let it go this time. If there's a next time, there won't be any mercy. Let it go just like that." Yang Kai was stunned. He had thought that he would definitely be locked up for a few years, so he had mentally prepared himself. Fang Tai, however, was overjoyed and repeatedly cupped his hands. "Thank you, Steward Chow. Master Steward, I will remember your kindness and never forget it." Zhu Zheng didn't comment and opened the cell door, saying, "Get out, both of you." "What are you still doing in there?" Fang Tai and Yang Kai walked out one by one. Zhu Zheng coldly snorted, "If it weren't for the fact that something happened in the orchard today, I wouldn't have cared about your lives." Fang Tai said, "Is it about the chief steward's patrol?" This wasn't a secret. The chores in the chores room had all heard about it from different sources. "Yes, the chief steward should have arrived at the orchard by now. The two of you should hurry over. If the chief steward patrols your territory, be careful. If something goes wrong, no one can save you." "Yes, yes, yes." Fang Tai quickly nodded. Yang Kai then remembered that the so-called chief steward was going to patrol the Fire Spirit Land's orchard today. The entire Fire Spirit Land had been busy just for today. However, this had nothing to do with him, so he didn't need to worry too much. He just needed to do his job well. Chapter 3872. As they spoke, the three of them arrived at the surface. At this moment, the entire market was silent. 3 days had passed, and the servants had all returned to their respective orchards. The market was naturally empty, and there were no Chichiao disciples outside the prison. It was as if there were only the three of them here. "It's getting late. Steward Chow, I'll take my leave first." Yang Kai bid farewell and soared into the sky, heading straight for the Fire Spirit Land. He has no respect at all. The steward master saved him, but he didn't even say a word of thanks. Fang Tai looked in the direction Yang Kai left and coldly snorted. There's no need for him to thank me. Zhu Zheng chuckled. He had already thanked those who needed to be thanked. Old Fang had spent a lot of heaven-opening pills for him to plead for leniency. For the sake of those heaven-opening pills, he couldn't be bothered to bicker with Yang Kai. His expression turned solemn as he said in a low voice, "You did well this time." Fang Tai said, "The reason this Fang can have today is all because of the steward master's nurturing. If the steward master has any orders, this Fang will do anything." Millimeter, very good. Zhu Zheng nodded, very satisfied with Fang Tai's attitude. Fang Tai frowned, "But there's something this Fang doesn't understand. Don't ask what you shouldn't ask." Zhu Zheng seemed to be clear about Fang Tai's doubts and blocked him with a single sentence. "Also, this was only an accident." Fang Tai lowered his head, "I understand. Let's hurry to the orchard. There might be a good show later. Moreover, the steward is here, so a small steward like me should accompany him." As Zhu Zheng spoke, he soared into the sky. Fang Tai didn't understand. He didn't know what kind of good show would happen later. He faintly felt that it had something to do with yesterday's incident, but since Zhu Zheng had already said so, he didn't ask any more questions. When the two of them set off, Yang Kai had already arrived at the Fire Spirit Land. When he passed by the village where the servant house was, he saw a golden light from the corner of his eyes. He lowered his head and saw that in front of his house, General Sai Chen was continuously pecking at the door, as if calling for him to come out. "General." Yang Kai greeted. General Sai Chen heard the sound and turned his head to take a look. Following which, he turned into the size of an ordinary rooster and flapped his wings, flying up and down as he flew towards Yang Kai. Yang Kai laughed. "General, you should lose some weight." Yang Kai didn't know if it was an illusion, but he felt that this stupid chicken was fatter than the first time he saw it. He stretched out his hand to summon it over and placed it on his head. Great General Sai Chen twisted his butt and found the most comfortable position he was familiar with. He then pecked the Yang Kai twice. Yang Kai said, "Something happened. It's not like I'm delaying the time on purpose. Stop pecking." Only then did General Sai Chen become obedient. After a short while, they arrived at the orchard. After flying for a while, they landed on their own territory and saw Dai Yu anxiously waiting for them. Hearing the commotion, Dai Yu turned her head and revealed a look of surprise. "Are you all right? I heard from Old Fang that you fought with someone and got caught by the patrol team." "Old Fang, you blabbermouth." Yang Kai had a look of disgust. This wasn't something to be proud of, so why did he spread it around? "I was the one who asked him if you were all right. Did the patrol team do anything to you?" Dai Yu asked with concern. "It's nothing. If they did, would I still be standing here?" Yang Kai smiled. Dai Yu nodded. "That's right. Did Steward Chow come out and save you?" "How did you know?" Yang Kai was stunned. Dai Yu said, "Old Fang gave Steward Chow a valuable gift." Yang Kai revealed a look of understanding. No wonder. He was wondering why Zhu Zheng was so kind. It was understandable that he went to save Fang Tai, but why did he save him as well? It turned out that Old Fang had done something. "How much did Old Fang give him?" Yang Kai asked. Dai Yu said, "I don't know, but it shouldn't be a small amount. Otherwise, it would be impossible for an errand boy to get caught in a private fight without any punishment. But it's fine as long as his fine." "That's true." Yang Kai nodded. "When you have time, tell Old Fang that you're safe. He probably doesn't know that you're out yet." Dai Yu looked around and said, "Moreover, the chief steward is patrolling the orchard today. You have to be careful and don't slack off." "I know. You should go back quickly. I heard from Zhu Zheng that the chief steward should be in the orchard already. It won't be good if he finds out that you're not in your own territory and came to my place." "Then I'll go back first," Dai Yu said and walked towards her orchard. After she left, Yang Kai took out his communication device with Old Fang and told him that he was safe. Old Fang quickly sent a message asking him about the details of the situation, so Yang Kai naturally told him everything he needed to know. After he finished, Old Fang replied and told him not to be so impulsive in the future. When Yang Kai asked how much he had given Zhu Zheng, the old man actually cut off the communication. Obviously, he didn't want to say more. This further confirmed Yang Kai's guess. Old Fang must have given him a lot this time. Otherwise, why would Zhu Zheng be so kind as to help him out? He cursed Zhu Zheng in his heart for his insatiable greed and swore to himself that if he had the chance in the future, he would make Zhu Zheng pay him back. He turned around and started to work in the orchard. The chief steward's inspection of the orchard was a big deal. It could be seen from Du Rufeng's attitude before, so Yang Kai was not careless. Moreover, he didn't know if it was because of what happened yesterday, but Yang Kai felt a little uneasy today, as if something was going to happen. This made him more vigilant. An hour later, Yang Kai stood in the orchard with his token in his hand. His face was so gloomy that it almost dripped water. There was a fruit missing in his orchard. The number of fire spirit fruits in the orchard was limited. It was recorded in the token of every handyman. If it was spoiled or rotten, they had to report it to the chief steward of the orchard. However, under normal circumstances, nothing would happen to the fire spirit fruits, let alone one missing for no reason. But at this moment, this happened in his orchard. The number of fire spirit fruits in the orchard was one less than the number recorded in the token. Yang Kai carefully counted 3 times in the orchard, and it was the same. How could there be one less fruit? Before he left last month, Yang Kai specially checked it once. At that time, the numbers were correct, but after a few days, the numbers were wrong. Yang Kai scanned the orchard with his divine senses and carefully searched the fruit trees one by one. After a while, he finally found something. He went straight to a fire spirit fruit tree and stared at a certain spot. There should have been a fire spirit fruit in that spot, but at this moment, there was nothing. On the stem where the fire spirit fruit should have been, there were still traces of freshly picked fruit. Even if Yang Kai had not picked the fire spirit fruit before, he knew that the fruit here had been picked less than 2 hours ago. Someone actually stole his fruit while he was not around. Kai Yong flew into a rage. Which idiot would be so daring as to do such a stupid thing? Stealing the fire spirit fruit could put him in a disadvantageous situation, but if the truth was found out, even 100 lives would not be enough to kill him. Who on earth was doing such a thing that harmed others without benefiting themselves? Or rather, who had a grudge against him? In the entire fire spirit land, Yang Kai did not know many people. The only ones who had a grudge against him were Zhu Zheng and Fang Tai, who he had a fight with yesterday. Fang Tai did not have the opportunity to do so. When he came over, he had not moved yet. Could it be Zhu Zheng? It should not be him either. Zhu Zheng had rescued him and Fang Tai from the market, so he also had no time to do such a thing. If it was not Zhu Zheng or Fang Tai, then who else had a grudge against him? After thinking about it, Yang Kai could not think of anything. However, the figure of shaking bear Xiong Yong flashed through his mind. If it was Xiong Yong, then there was a possibility. However, there was no grudge between him and Xiong Yong. There was no reason for the other party to be so heavy-handed, right? Perhaps he could ask Dai Yu. When he came over, Dai Yu had been in his orchard. Perhaps she had seen something. After making up his mind, just as he was about to move, he suddenly heard a bustling sound coming from not far away. When he looked up, Yang Kai's expression stiffened. He saw a group of people flying through the air, neither too fast nor too slow. The person in the lead had a dignified appearance. When he looked around, he had a dignified expression. At a glance, it was obvious that he was a person of high status and was around 40 years old. On his left, Du Rufeng was half a step behind to accompany him. He had a smile on his face and was saying something to the man. The man only had his hands behind his back. From time to time, he would lower his head and look around. Occasionally, he would nod. Behind Du Rufeng was Zhu Zheng. However, looking at his position in the crowd, it seemed that he was the kind of person who could not even speak. Even though he had never seen them before, Yang Kai immediately recognized that the middle-aged man in the lead should be the chief manager of the entire Kikichiao land. He instinctively shrunk his neck. If the orchard was peaceful, he had nothing to be afraid of. However, now that his territory was missing a fruit, this matter was a little difficult to explain. In his heart, he secretly prayed that this group of people would leave quickly and not pay attention to him. However, what he was afraid of just had to happen. While he was feeling guilty, Yang Kai heard the chief manager say, "Hey, isn't that Duanhai's General Sai Chen? Why did he come to the orchard?" Yang Kai almost spat out blood. He was so preoccupied with his guilty conscience that he actually forgot that the great general was still lying on his head. The great general's body was dazzling with golden light, like a lighthouse in the darkness. It was difficult not to notice it. If he had known earlier, he would not have brought the great general with him today. He should have left it in the servant room. Du Rufeng said, "The chief manager is right. That is the Venerable One's General Sai Chen." The chief manager laughed. How did this servant offend General Sai Chen? The general actually wants to punish him like this. Du Rufeng said, "The chief manager misunderstood. He did not offend General Sai Chen. Previously, I also thought that he offended the general and was punished. However, when I reported to the Venerable One, I found out that the general likes him and is close to him." Chapter 3873. Like him? Get close to him? The manager revealed a surprised expression. "I understand General Sai Chen's temper a little. He wouldn't care about normal people. What's so special about this servant that he could gain General Sai Chen's favor?" Du Rufeng laughed. "This disciple doesn't know. Maybe General Sai Chen has a good eye for people. Let's go down and take a look." The manager was interested and waved his hand, leading a group of people to descend. When Yang Kai saw this scene, he had the urge to curse. But if it was a blessing, it wasn't a curse. If it was a curse, it couldn't be avoided. Seeing the group of people bustling over, he had no choice but to greet them. He cupped his hands and bowed. "Yang Kai greets master." The manager didn't look at him, but looked at General Sai Chen with a smile. He didn't need to pay too much attention to a mere servant. The reason he came down was mainly because of General Sai Chen. Du Rufeng, who was following behind him, said, "Yang Kai, this is the manager of the Seven Openings Land. He is in charge of all matters of the Seven Openings Land." As he spoke, he gave Yang Kai a look, telling him not to be nervous. Yang Kai bowed again. "Greetings, manager." It would be strange if he wasn't nervous. His orchard had lost a fruit for no reason. It would be fine if it wasn't discovered, but if it was discovered, how would he explain it? Could he say that it was stolen? Where was the evidence? If he couldn't find the person who stole the fruit, he would have to take responsibility for the loss of the fire spirit fruit. He didn't know if Du Rufeng would be able to protect him when the time came. She wanted to send him a sound transmission to explain the whole story, but this chief manager was clearly a heaven-opening expert. How could a sound transmission be concealed in front of him? Even though he was feeling depressed, he appeared calm and composed on the surface. Even though he saw from the corner of his eye that a group of people who had followed the chief steward spread out to investigate his orchard, his expression did not change and his heart did not beat faster. Since it had come to this, he could only pray that those people wouldn't carefully check the number of fire spirit fruits. Only then would he be able to escape this calamity. Inadvertently, he saw Zhu Zheng smiling at him. That smile seemed to have a deeper meaning. Before he could think any further, he heard the steward ask, "How did you manage to make General Sai Chen so close to you?" Yang Kai lowered his head. "I don't know either." "You don't know either?" The chief manager raised his eyebrows. Du Rufeng said from the side, "Yang Kai, just say what you want to say. The chief manager is just asking casually. It's nothing important." Yang Kai said with a bitter face, "I really don't know. A few months ago, when I first came to the orchard, the great general passed by the orchard. I don't know how it fell from the sky and landed right in front of me. Perhaps the great general thought that I had done something to it, so it was angry and wanted to peck the fruits in my orchard. How could this disciple bear it? As an odd-job worker of the orchard, taking care of the fruits is my duty. I was angry and fought with it." "You fought with it?" The chief manager laughed. "You're quite brave." Yang Kai said embarrassedly. At that time, this disciple had just arrived and didn't know the great general's identity. "That's why I dared to offend it. If it were today, I definitely wouldn't have the guts." Du Rufeng nodded. "All right, chief manager. This disciple has been in the land of fire spirit for less than half a year. He's indeed a newcomer, but he's already made a great contribution.
Oh.
The chief manager revealed a look of surprise. Looking at Kai Yang seriously, he didn't ask what kind of contribution Kai Yang had made. Nodding his head, he said, "You can continue." Yang Kai spread his hands. "That's all. From then on, whenever I came to the herb garden, the great general would be like this. So it's a friendship formed through fighting." The chief manager smiled and nodded. "That's interesting." This was the first time Du Rufeng had heard of such a thing, so he pointed at Yang Kai and said, "You little brat, you should be glad you didn't do anything to the great general at that time, otherwise, the venerable would have skinned you alive." Yang Kai laughed dryly. He thought to himself that the great general had lost quite a lot of feathers at that time. At this moment, the people who were scattered in the orchard returned one after another. One of them glanced at Yang Kai, then handed something that looked like a jade scroll to the chief manager. Yang Kai's heart tightened. He had a vague feeling that something was wrong. The chief manager took the jade scroll and scanned it with his divine telekinesis. He then handed the jade scroll to Du Rufeng. "Take a look." Du Rufeng took it curiously and glanced at Yang Kai. He guessed that something must have happened to the orchard. Otherwise, why would the chief manager ask him to take a look at this? This was not within his authority. However, what could have happened to the orchard? After carefully inspecting it, Du Rufeng's expression changed slightly. He looked at Yang Kai coldly and said, "Yang Kai, can you tell me why your orchard is missing a fire spirit fruit?" "It's really missing." Yang Kai was surprised.
You know?
Du Rufeng frowned. Yang Kai said, "Before honored seniors arrived, Disciple was counting the number of fire spirit fruits and found that there was a discrepancy between the number recorded before Disciple left last time. However, Disciple wasn't sure at that time, so honored seniors arrived just as Disciple was about to carefully count them." He paused and said, "Now it seems that the previous count was not wrong. There is indeed a fire spirit fruit missing." Du Rufeng said in a low voice, "As a servant, you should take care of everything in the orchard. Do you know what kind of punishment you will receive if the spirit fruit is missing?"
"I don't know."
"A light punishment would be crippling your cultivation and banishing you from the Chichiao land. A heavy punishment would be to kill you on the spot." Yang Kai was shocked. This was not giving him a way out at all. He exclaimed, "Master Du, I am innocent. I counted the number of spirit fruits before I left a few days ago. The number of spirit fruits was exactly the same. I didn't have time to do anything when I came here today. The lack of spirit fruits has nothing to do with me. Master Du, how can it have nothing to do with you?" Du Rufeng's expression was dignified. "Since you are the servant who takes care of this orchard, everything in this orchard is closely related to you. The loss of the spirit fruit is due to your lack of care, unless you reported it to the manager here before." As he spoke, he turned to look at Zhu Zheng. "Zhu Zheng, did Yang Kai report it to you?" Zhu Zheng stepped forward and took out a jade slip to check it carefully. After a while, he cupped his hands and said, "I did not find any records." Du Rufeng looked at him deeply, then turned to Yang Kai and said, "Do you have anything else to say?" "I don't accept this." Yang Kai straightened his neck. "The loss of the spirit fruit is not because I took care of it. If it was lost, it was because someone stole it. The one who should be punished is the person who stole the fruit." Du Rufeng's expression changed and he immediately shouted, "Don't talk nonsense. Who dares to steal spirit fruits in the Chichiao land?" Yang Kai snorted. "If someone didn't steal it, how could the fruit be lost for no reason?" "Did you see it?" The chief manager, who had been silent all this time, suddenly asked. Losing a spirit fruit was not a big deal. Whoever took care of it would be punished, but now someone actually dared to steal the spirit fruit. They had to make an example of this and let everyone in the Chichiao land know what the consequences of stealing a spirit fruit were. "I didn't see it, but I have my suspicions." Yang Kai shook his head. "Chief manager is at the heaven opening realm, so you should be proficient in some soul-searching techniques. As long as we capture those people and interrogate them carefully, the truth will come to light." The chief manager smiled. "And if we can't get anything out of them?" Yang Kai said, "Then count it on me. When the time comes, We'll do what we need to do. You've got a good plan. The chief manager lightly snorted, but who knows if you're trying to drag them down with you? If we really want to do a soul-searching, we should start with you. Yang Kai almost coughed up blood when he heard this. This was like shooting himself in the foot. If his soul was really searched, wouldn't he lose all his secrets? If he was unlucky, his soul might even be damaged, causing him to lose his mind forever. However, today's matter could not be explained clearly in a few words, and he did not have the strength to resist. The chief manager was at the 4th stage heaven-opening realm at the very least. Killing him would be as easy as crushing a bug. Unable to escape, unable to fight, he could only turn to look at Du Rufeng. Du Rufeng did not disappoint. He cupped his hands and said, "Chief Steward, since this matter happened in the Fire Spirit Land, then let the Fire Spirit Land take full responsibility. Let me take this person back. I will give Chief Steward an explanation." The chief manager shook his head. "Rufeng, since you've asked, logically speaking, I should give you face. However, today's matter is no longer as simple as losing the spirit fruit. It involves theft. You should also know that the spirit fruits everywhere are the foundation of the 7 Openings Land, and we can't tolerate the slightest bit of carelessness. Now, there's actually a servant who dared to touch the foundation of the 7 Openings Land. This matter should not only be explained to me, but also to the heavenly monarch." Du Rufeng's heart trembled. The chief manager even mentioned the heavenly monarch, which completely cut off his right to speak. He looked at Yang Kai with a speechless expression, thinking, of all things to talk about, why did you have to talk about someone stealing the spirit fruit? Now, I can't help even if I want to. Yang Kai was also a little dumbfounded. He never thought that his original intention of shifting the blame would end up cutting off his own path of survival. According to the chief manager's words, as long as it was not a servant who stole the spirit fruit, it was not a big deal. After all, some of the fire spirit fruits were already spoiled or dead, so there would be a shortage. However, when it involved a servant, it was a completely different concept. Capture him. As soon as the chief manager gave the order, 2 people immediately walked out from the left and right, heading towards Yang Kai. Yang Kai's entire body tensed up, and he quietly gathered all his strength. He was wavering between being captured and fighting to his death. Right at this moment, a cry was heard. The great General Sai Chen above him shook its wings, and a ball of golden light floated out from its mouth. Yang Kai habitually reached out to grab it. When the golden light dissipated, what appeared in his hand was not the heaven-opening pellet that he was used to seeing, but a fruit core the size of a longan fruit core? Yang Kai was stunned. Du Rufeng was also stunned, but he quickly reacted, "Wait a moment." The 2 Chiqiao disciples who were approaching Yang Kai immediately stopped. Du Rufeng quickly came in front of Yang Kai and picked up the fruit core in his hand. After examining it for a while, he laughed and said, "Chief Manager, the thief seems to have confessed. The loss of the spirit fruit should not be related to the servants here." As he spoke, he presented the fruit core in his hand. Chapter 3874. The head manager took it and examined it for a moment. He then turned to Du Rufeng and chuckled, "You said General Sai Chen liked him and wanted to get close to him, but I think he was just looking for an opportunity to frame him. He almost got him killed, but luckily he didn't go too far and spared him at the crucial moment." Du Rufeng also smiled, "So that's how it is. I was wondering why the Grand General would behave like that. So it was all for today." He paused for a moment before continuing, "Now that the truth is out, it means that the missing fruit was not stolen by the servants. It was just that the Grand General ate one on a whim. Head manager, what do you think of this Yang Kai?" The head manager waved his hand, and the 2 Chiqiao disciples who had walked out immediately retreated back. After this incident, the head manager no longer had any interest in staying. He turned around and said, "Let's look elsewhere." With his hands behind his back, he walked off into the distance. A group of people followed him and left. Before Du Rufeng left, he glanced at Yang Kai and secretly transmitted a message to him, "Take care of yourself." Yang Kai watched as the group left. His gaze was fixed on Zhu Zheng's back. When the Grand General spat out the core of the fruit, he clearly saw Zhu Zheng's surprised expression. He couldn't help but frown. Who was the culprit behind today's incident? Was it related to Zhu Zheng? After carefully sorting out the sequence of events, the person who stole the fruit definitely wanted to kill him. Furthermore, it was only today that he stole one of his fruits. He and Fang Tai were locked up in the city's prison, so they arrived late and gave the thief a chance to take action. The culprit wasn't Fang Tai, but he was caught by the patrol because of Fang Tai. Yesterday, Fang Tai also seemed to want to provoke him, so the person who saved him and him was Zhu Zheng. His emotions fluctuated and his divine sense moved. Yang Kai felt as if he had cleared up the fog and seen the truth of the matter, but, if it was really as he guessed, then how did this guy guarantee that the head manager would come to check on his medicinal garden? Just because of General Sai Chen? It wasn't impossible. As long as the head steward saw General Sai Chen, he would definitely be curious. At that time, whether or not the head steward came down to investigate, this person would be able to guide him. Unfortunately, it was the chief steward who wanted to come down today, not someone else. Otherwise, Yang Kai would definitely be able to verify whether his guess was correct. Yang Kai was infuriated that he almost got himself killed for no reason. If it wasn't for Grand General Sai Chen turning the tide at the last moment, he wouldn't have been able to escape this calamity. Even Du Rufeng wouldn't have been able to protect him. From the fact that Du Rufeng didn't show any respect to the chief steward, it could be seen that this matter was related to an odd job worker's theft. On the contrary, it didn't matter that the Grand General had eaten one. This odd job was unbearable. It had only been a few months, and he had almost gotten into trouble. He still had a long way to go. Thinking about this, Yang Kai hurriedly carried the Grand General down from his head. Holding it with both hands, he looked at it carefully. Previously, when this guy had used his head as a chicken coop, Kai Yang had felt quite ashamed. But after witnessing the great general's ability, the god of wealth, he had let it be. He had never thought that today he would need its help. Now that he looked at it, it was pleasing to the eye. Pulling it into his embrace, he ravaged it with all his might. You're really something. Even in such a hopeless situation, you still managed to find a way out. The Grand General's feathers stood on end as it cried out. Using all its strength, it couldn't break free from Yang Kai's grasp. It cried out miserably. After a long while, Yang Kai finally let it go. Sitting on the ground, he placed the Grand General in front of him and chuckled. At this moment, the Grand General no longer had a majestic appearance. Its feathers were a mess. Once it broke free from Yang Kai's grasp, it fluttered its little wings and flew over, pecking non-stop. Yang Kai raised his hand to block it. All right, just vent your anger. After playing around for a while, the Grand General finally calmed down. Standing in front of Yang Kai, it used its beak to comb its feathers. From time to time, it would tilt its head and glance at Yang Kai. Its gaze was extremely arrogant. Yang Kai placed his hands on his knees and cupped his cheeks. He curiously asked, "How did you get the fire spirit fruit's core? Have you eaten the fire spirit fruit before?" The Grand General opened its mouth and spat out a ball of golden light. Yang Kai caught it and discovered that it was actually a few cores. You really ate it before? Yang Kai was astonished. It wasn't hard to explain why Sai Chen had the ability to save him at such a crucial moment. Why did you help me? Actually, what Yang Kai wanted to know was why Sai Chen treated him so differently. When others wanted to obtain the heaven-opening pill from the Grand General, it would also depend on the Grand General's mood. Only he was able to use an insect to exchange for a pill. He was even able to use this method to open up a path of wealth. This definitely wasn't because he had fought with the Grand General before. It was a pity that Sai Chen hadn't communicated with him properly. If the Grand General could understand what he said, it meant that the Grand General had the ability to communicate with others, but was too lazy to do so. Since he couldn't understand, Yang Kai was too lazy to think about it. He hugged the Grand General and placed it on his head. Yang Kai stood up and said, "Since you saved my life today, if you have any requests in the future, just tell me and I will do my best." He wasn't sure if the Grand General heard him clearly, but he didn't have much of a reaction. Although the orchard was large, The head steward had only patrolled for a day. Yang Kai waited until the next day before Du Rufeng arrived. As soon as they met, Du Rufeng said, "Yang Kai, I tried my best to exonerate you yesterday, but it was a pity that I couldn't do anything about the theft. Fortunately, at the last moment, the Grand General took the initiative to stand up for you. Otherwise, the consequences would have been unimaginable." Yang Kai cupped his hands and said, "Master Du is too serious. Yesterday, this disciple saw the care and concern that Master Du showed to this disciple. This disciple will remember it in his heart." Du Rufeng patted his shoulder. "It's good that you can think this way. Why? Do you have something to tell me?" If Yang Kai hadn't sent him a message yesterday, he wouldn't have come today. Yang Kai said, "There is something." He gestured with his hand, "Master Du, please." After inviting Du Rufeng to a nearby table and chair, Yang Kai took out some fragrant spring water and began cooking. These things were all stored in his space ring for later use. Du Rufeng smiled and said, "If you have something to say, don't beat around the bush." Yang Kai hesitated for a moment before asking, "Disciple wants to ask, does Master Du's previous words still count?" Du Rufeng looked at him with interest. "What? Have you thought it through? Didn't you refuse this king before?" Yang Kai let out a dry laugh. "That was then and this is now. Disciple had some misgivings before, but after yesterday's events, Disciple discovered that as a servant, there are many things that are beyond Disciple's control. Disciple doesn't like this kind of feeling. Moreover, water flows downwards and people strive to climb higher. This is a matter of course. Since Master has given me this opportunity, Disciple will naturally grasp it well." Du Rufeng smiled lightly. "In my Chiqiao lands, the number of servants is the largest, but the status of a servant is the lowest. Some people come to my Chiqiao lands and work for 3,000 years without being able to turn over a new leaf, while others only need a few years to become a carp leaping over the dragon gate. This all depends on one's own ability. You are a person with ability, so this king wants to guide you. Rest assured, this king's previous words will naturally count. Thank you in advance, Master Du." Yang Kai stood up and bowed, but he didn't take a seat and continued, "Disciple boldly asks, if Disciple follows Master Du, what will Disciple's status be? Washing away your servant status, you will become a disciple of the Chiqiao lands. At that time, what should I do?" "What do you want to do?" Du Rufeng asked back. Yang Kai raised an eyebrow. "Can Disciple do whatever Disciple wants to do?" Du Rufeng chuckled. "As long as it is within my protection and doesn't violate the rules of the Chiqiao lands, Disciple can do anything." Yang Kai stretched out his hand and drew a large circle in front of his eyes. "Disciple wants to be the manager of this orchard." "Chem." Du Rufeng narrowed his eyes slightly. "Your appetite is a bit big. If Master can't fulfill my wish, then Disciple will be presumptuous." Du Rufeng snorted. "Are you trying to provoke this king?" Yang Kai doesn't dare. Du Rufeng stared at him for a while, faintly regretting making such a big promise. Now that Yang Kai's words had forced him to ride a tiger and it was difficult to back down. If he agreed, he couldn't make the decision. If he didn't agree, it would be embarrassing in front of Yang Kai. After weighing the pros and cons, Du Rufeng said, "It's a good thing that you want to be the manager of the orchard. As you said, people strive for higher positions. However, the position of manager now belongs to someone else. Although Zhu Zheng is a bit incompetent, he hasn't made any big mistakes. It would be unfair to abruptly remove him from the position of manager." "Why don't?" Without waiting for him to finish, Yang Kai interrupted, "What if Steward Chow makes a mistake?" Du Rufeng frowned. What mistake did Zhu Zheng make? However, no matter what mistake he made, he will be dealt with according to the rules of the sect. No one can help him. Yang Kai heard this and said, "After Steward Chow is removed from his position, can Disciple take over the position of manager?" Du Rufeng laughed. "Is there a grudge between you and Zhu Zheng? Why do you want to drag him down and replace him?" Yang Kai shook his head. "Disciple will reveal the riddle to Master later. Please answer my question, Master." Du Rufeng thought for a while and said, "The position of manager needs to be personally appointed by the Venerable One. I only have the right to recommend." "Thank you, Master. All right, you've been beating around the bush for so long. What do you want to say? Just say it. Du Rufeng was getting impatient. He was slightly displeased. It happened yesterday. The general didn't take the spiritual fruit. Someone really did steal it. Du Rufeng's expression changed, and he said in a low voice, Yang Kai, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want. Don't you know that someone might die if you say that? Yang Kai looked down and said, I didn't know before yesterday, but after yesterday, I found out. Du Rufeng tapped his fingers on the stone table lightly. Tell me in detail. Chapter 3875. It's like this. When I came to the orchard yesterday, the first thing I did was to count the number of spirit fruits, but I found that one was missing. It had only been 2 hours since it was picked. Just as I was worrying, the chief steward and the others arrived nearby. At that time, I didn't have time to find out the truth. Master also saw what happened after that. I was almost consigned to eternal damnation. Du Rufeng narrowed his eyes, a cold light flashing in them. You mean, this matter has something to do with Zhu Zheng? Before it's confirmed, I don't dare to make any rash comments. Master Du, please watch a good show. A good show? After the time it takes to burn a stick of incense, Yang Kai flew down from another orchard and landed directly in front of the two men. The two men's reactions were completely opposite. One was overjoyed and walked forward to greet him, while the other's expression changed slightly and he took a step back. He looked at Yang Kai with a face full of horror and confusion. Brother, are you all right? Old Fang looked at Yang Kai from head to toe. Yang Kai didn't look at him, but stared straight at Xiong and said, it was scary but not dangerous. Didn't I tell you before? Old Fang said, I didn't see it with my own eyes, so I was a bit worried. Now that you're all right, I don't have to worry about anything. He paused and said, Brother, did you come here for something? Yang Kai grinned. Can't I come to see you? See me? Old Fang was stunned. Since you came to see me, why did you keep staring at Xiong? He instinctively felt that there was something wrong between the two. He turned to look at Xiong and found that there was indeed a problem. Xiong was actually avoiding his eyes and had a guilty expression. He didn't know why. Brother Xiong, we haven't seen each other for a few days. How come you've become so estranged? Yang Kai looked at Xiong with a fake smile. Xiong's face darkened. Am I close to you? We're not even close. How can we be estranged? That's true. I'm not that close to Brother Xiong, but why did Brother Xiong look so surprised when you saw me today? What surprise? What surprise? Xiong waved his hand and said in a low voice, I was just born with big eyes. Is that so? Yang Kai laughed. I won't hide it from Brother Xiong. The chief steward went to my place yesterday and inspected my orchard. Xiong's eyes widened as he said, Head steward went over. Brother Xiong, you're very concerned about me. Why would I be concerned about you? I'm just, if you don't tell me. Xiong coldly snorted and sat down on the ground. He leaned against a fruit tree and hugged his arms as he dozed off. The chief steward Yang's was being inspected by the chief steward was not a good thing. Taking care of the orchard was the responsibility of the servants. If they did well, they wouldn't be rewarded, but if they were found to be doing poorly, they would definitely be punished. Therefore, no servant was willing to have the chief steward visit their territory. They all hoped that he would just take a look at them and leave. However, every time the chief steward came to inspect, there would always be some unlucky people. Yang Kai's luck was really bad. There were hundreds of servants in the orchard, but the chief steward just had to go to his place. Now, even if there were no problems, there would definitely be some problems. He didn't do anything to you, did he? I almost couldn't see you again, old brother. Yang Kai let out a long sigh, his face full of lingering fear. Old Fang was shocked. What happened? Why is it so serious? Yang Kai solemnly said, I lost a fire spirit fruit in my orchard. Old Fang's face immediately turned white. Brother, you can't joke about this. You're new here. Although I've told you a lot of the rules of the orchard, you probably haven't realized the seriousness of losing a spirit fruit. Let me tell you this, the lives of us servants are not as valuable as a spirit fruit. I know, I know. Yang Kai nodded repeatedly. Losing a spirit fruit is a serious crime. The chief steward wanted to arrest me on the spot. Even if Master Du came forward to plead for me, it was useless. Then why did you? Old Fang was confused. Du Rufeng had come forward to plead for mercy, but it was useless. Why was Yang Kai still standing there? What happened after that? Yang Kai grinned and pointed at the great general. At the last moment, the great general made a move. It actually spat out a fruit core from its mouth. Now, the truth is out. Old Fang blinked and finally understood. So, the great general stole the spirit fruit and ate it. Exactly. Otherwise, why would the orchard lose a spirit fruit for no reason? Who would have the guts to steal it? You scared me to death. Old Fang let out a long breath. Although he knew that Yang Kai was standing there, he still couldn't help but tremble with fear when he heard the whole story. Why would the great general do such a thing? Old Fang looked at Yang Kai's head in confusion. How would I know? Maybe he ate too many insects and got greedy. But although the great general caused this, it was also thanks to him that I was able to survive. I should thank him. Old Fang, do you have any blue flame silkworms? A little, but not much. Give me all of them. After taking the blue flame silkworms from Old Fang, Yang Kai didn't stay any longer and turned to leave. In the void, a brilliance like a water curtain flowed. Under the brilliance, Du Rufeng hid himself and watched everything that happened. He was less than 300 feet away from Old Fang, but Old Fang didn't notice anything from beginning to end. Just after Yang Kai left, he suddenly stretched out his hand and made a hand sign. The brilliance like a water curtain wriggled slightly and Yang Kai quietly flashed in from outside. Will he fall for such a clumsy performance? Du Rufeng chuckled. Yang Kai grinned. That depends on who he is. If it's someone like Old Fang, I'm afraid I can't fool him. But if it's someone like Xiong Yong, I'm not so sure. Let's wait and see. If it's really as I guessed, he'll definitely take action. Du Rufeng said, What if you guessed wrong? Master, will you punish me? Not really, but this king doesn't have so much time to waste here. I'll only give you half a day. If you don't see the result after half a day, this matter will end here. Fine, half a day it is. Yang Kai had no choice but to agree, and it was even more impossible for him to bargain with the other party. Turning his head, he curiously asked, Senior, this artifact is quite interesting. If we really end up luring the snake out of its hole, will it be able to conceal our whereabouts? Du Rufeng said proudly, This treasure was bestowed by the Venerable. It's called the Shadowless Veil. Under the third-grade heaven opening realm, it's impossible to see through its flaws. Even those above the third-grade heaven opening realm might be able to deceive them as long as they don't search carefully. Yang Kai couldn't help but click his tongue. It was good to have a backer. He didn't have to worry about breaking through to the heaven opening realm. He had a lot of treasures in his hands, such as the capturing heaven net and the shadowless veil. On the other hand, he had worked so hard to fight with his wits and strength here, all for the identity of a small orchard manager. Just as he was speaking, Yang Kai's expression suddenly brightened. The fish has taken the bait. Below, Xiong Yong, who was leaning against a fruit tree with his arms crossed and dozing off, slowly opened his eyes. He looked around for a while, then stood up with a dignified and hesitant look on his face, as if he had encountered something difficult to decide. After hesitating for a long time, Xiong Yong made up his mind and turned his head to call out, Old Fang, take care of the orchard for me. After saying this, without waiting for Old Fang's agreement, he directly soared into the sky in the direction of the center of the orchard. Under the shadowless veil, Yang Kai and Du Rufeng looked at each other. Du Rufeng said, I'm afraid it's really like what you said. Yang Kai said, Master, you'll know when you see it. Du Rufeng no longer said anything. He urged the shadowless veil and quietly followed behind Xiong Yong. Xiong Yong looked back several times, but found nothing. After a short while, 1,000 blades peak appeared in front of them. This peak was strange, like a sword inserted into the ground. The scenery on the peak was good, but it was surrounded by orchards, and there were no other peaks in the distance. It was a very rare solitary peak. There was a hall on 1,000 Blades Peak, where the orchard manager usually lived and worked. From time to time, there were handymen coming in and out of the peak. Obviously, they were all looking for Zhu Zheng. Zhu Zheng liked to work in the pavilion on the edge of the peak outside the hall. Sitting in the pavilion, he could see the small mountains and the continuous orchard below. It gave people a feeling that everything was under his control. Zhu Zheng liked this feeling. At this moment, there were not many handymen looking for Zhu Zheng. After all, nothing serious happened in the orchard. Even if there was a problem, the handymen would find a way to solve it. Only when there was something they couldn't solve would they come to Zhu Zheng. When Xiangyong arrived, he didn't go to Zhu Zheng immediately, probably because he felt a little guilty. He waited for 2 hours until all the other handymen left. In the pavilion, Zhu Zheng didn't raise his head. "What's the matter?" "Steward Chow," Xiangyong shouted in a low voice. Zhu Zheng's expression changed. He looked up and saw Xiangyong. He immediately looked around and gritted his teeth. "Why are you here? Didn't I tell you not to look for me during this time?" Xiangyong stretched his neck and said, "I don't want to bother Steward Chow, but there's something I don't understand. I need Steward Chow's help." "What's so important?" Zhu Zheng's expression was ugly. "That young Kai, shut up." Zhu Zheng suddenly stood up and glared at Xiangyong for a while. He said in a low voice, "Come with me." With his hands behind his back, he led the way to the main hall. Xiangyong scratched his head and had no choice but to follow. The two entered the main hall one after the other. Zhu Zheng waved the token in his hand and opened the restriction. He then turned around and glared at Xiangyong. "Are you crazy? How dare you mention that outside? Don't you know that the walls have ears? If someone heard you, not only you, but even I can't escape death." Xiangyong said, "But Master Steward said that as long as I followed your orders, that young Kai would definitely die. I followed your arrangements and took the risk of losing my head. Why is that brat perfectly fine?" Zhu Zheng frowned. "How do you know? Did you see young Kai?" Chapter 3876. Xiangyong sneered, "Steward Chow, you don't need to know how I found out. I just know." Zhu Zheng's face darkened as he said, "Yesterday's incident was a little unexpected. The head steward went to inspect his herb garden as I wished and discovered that he had lost the spirit fruit. We were just about to arrest him when General Sai Chen appeared at the crucial moment and ruined everything. Steward Chow doesn't need to elaborate on the process. I found out about it from other sources." Zhu Zheng was stunned. "If you know everything, why are you still here?" "Of course I'm here to ask for an explanation from Steward Chow." Zhu Zheng laughed. "Ask for an explanation? What explanation do you want from me?" His expression turned cold. "Why should I give you any explanation?" Xiangyong snorted and said, "If it weren't for your instigation, how could I have done such a despicable thing? Now that the matter has been done, but the result has not been obtained. Shouldn't Lord Steward take responsibility?" Zhu Zheng's expression was so cold that it was almost dripping water. "When did I instigate you? I've told you before that this is a serious matter. You have to think it through before you act and bear the consequences. Now that things have gone wrong, you're blaming me?" Xiangyong twisted his neck. "I don't care. We're in the same boat now. If one dies, the other won't be able to escape." Zhu Zheng was so angry that he wanted to slap the guy in front of him to death. He secretly regretted giving him such a bad idea a few days ago. Now, he didn't get to eat the mutton, but got himself into trouble. "What do you want?" Zhu Zheng asked coldly. Xiangyong was a simpleton, and his status was low. He was not as valuable as Zhu Zheng himself. Since Xiangyong was using this to threaten him, Zhu Zheng could not do anything about it. Xiangyong chuckled and said, "It's not like Lord Steward doesn't know what this one's intentions are. As long as Lord Steward can satisfy this one will naturally be able to satisfy Lord Steward." Zhu Zheng narrowed his eyes. "You want to change your territory?" Xiangyong said, "It doesn't matter if we switch back or not, as long as we can be transferred to Xiao Dai's side." Zhu Zheng gently nodded. "If that's the case, it's not impossible. How about this? You go back and wait for my news. I'll let you know when I'm done here." Xiong Yong looked at him suspiciously. Master Steward, are you trying to trick me? Although I look a little big and burly, I'm not that easy to fool. Zhu Zheng was furious. Why would I lie to you? Do I need to lie to you about this? Then I'll trust you one more time. Xiong Yong nodded and cupped his hands. I'll take my leave first and wait for the good news from the Master Steward. Wait. Zhu Zheng raised his hand to stop him. Xiong Yong turned around. Master Steward, do you have any other orders? Zhu Zheng gritted his teeth and asked, where is the fruit? What fruit? Xiong Yong was confused by his words. What do you think? Oh. Xiong Yong suddenly understood. You're talking about the fruit that I secretly plucked. He patted his stomach and said, of course, I've already sacrificed it to my internal organs. It doesn't taste that good. You. Zhu Zheng looked at him speechlessly and waved his hand in annoyance. Get lost, get lost. Closing the restriction in the main hall and letting Xiong Yong leave, Zhu Zheng paced around the main hall for a while before he sighed heavily. The plan this time could be said to be perfect. If General Sai Chen hadn't intervened at the last moment, Yang Kai would have been dead by now. But now, Yang Kai was not only fine, but he himself had caused a lot of trouble. Xiong Yong. He couldn't let him live. If there was a first time, there would be a second time. He didn't want to be threatened by people in the future. However, even if he was the steward of the orchard, it wasn't easy to get rid of a servant. He still had to wait for an opportunity. In Yang Kai's orchard, there was a flash of light and two figures appeared out of thin air. It was Yang Kai and Du Rufeng. Yang Kai observed Du Rufeng's expression and found that he was as calm as an ancient well. He didn't know what he was thinking. He didn't take the liberty to ask. What he had seen and heard today had completely confirmed his previous guess. Zhu Zheng and Xiong Yong definitely wouldn't have a good ending. When Zhu Zheng fell, whether or not he could be promoted was secondary. The main thing was that he didn't have to constantly be on guard against difficulties from above. Telling Du Rufeng that he wanted to be the steward of the orchard was just asking for too much. Yang Kai didn't think that Du Rufeng would really agree. Firstly, he didn't have enough talent. He had only been in the orchard for a few months. Secondly, his cultivation wasn't enough. It would be difficult for him to convince others. If he couldn't be the steward of the orchard, Du Rufeng would definitely be compensated elsewhere. At that time, there would be a lot of room for him to mediate. If it weren't for the fact that this matter was really related to his life, Yang Kai wouldn't have been so ruthless. If Zhu Zheng just wanted to make things difficult for him and get some benefits from him, Yang Kai would have tolerated it. But now, this guy even used such a vicious method of stealing spirit fruits. Yang Kai felt that if he tolerated it any longer, he wouldn't even know how he died. He asked Du Rufeng to take a seat, poured tea, and waited quietly. After a long time, Du Rufeng smiled slightly and said, "You're really something. You've been here for less than half a year, and there are actually two people who want to kill you. How did you offend them? I'm also very curious." Yang Kai had a puzzled expression on his face. If it's Steward Chow, it's probably because I didn't show him filial piety after receiving a huge reward last time. This caused Steward Chow to hold a grudge against me. But as for Xiong Yong, I can't figure out the reason no matter how much I think about it. Du Rufeng picked up his tea and took a sip. No matter what the reason is, since they dared to steal spirit fruits in private, no matter how many lives they have, it won't be enough for them to die. Yang Kai was slightly stunned. Old Fang was right. The lives of the servants were indeed not as valuable as the spirit fruits. It could even be said that the Chichiao land didn't even treat the servants as humans. As I said before, the steward position needs to be personally appointed by the Venerable One. I only have the right to recommend. I'll report you and explain the cause and effect of this matter. As for whether the Venerable One agrees in the end, it'll be up to him. Whether or not it succeeds, I thank Master Du for your kindness. Yang Kai cupped his hands and said, "Let's wait for the news." Du Rufeng patted Yang Kai's shoulder and flew away. The next few days were peaceful. Yang Kai strolled around the orchard every day and occasionally went to talk to Dai Yu. Xiong Yong was nowhere to be seen. He didn't come over these few days. He sent a message to Old Fang and learned that Xiong had been very obedient and had been sleeping in the orchard every day. On the 5th day, Yang Kai was catching insects with Daiyu in her orchard. Suddenly, he felt someone calling him and quickly took out a jade disc.
Old Fang?
Daiyu recognized that it was Old Fang's communication device.
Yes.
Yang Kai nodded and used his divine sense to check the jade disc. He turned to Daiyu and said, Xiong has been captured.
Daiyu was stunned. Xiong? What did he do?
Yang Kai shook his head, indicating that he didn't know. He didn't know what Du Rufeng's arrangement was, so it wasn't good to reveal anything at this time. Daiyu frowned. Although he's a bit reckless, he can still distinguish between right and wrong.
Did Old Fang see him being captured? Yang Kai nodded.
Several Chiqiao Land disciples went to capture him. Old Fang saw it with his own eyes. Half an incense stick of time ago. Yang Kai looked up in the direction of Thousand Blades Peak. Since Xiong had been captured, it meant that Zhu Zheng had also made his move. He just didn't know what kind of expression Zhu Zheng had on his face at this moment. Would he be surprised? However, since he dared to frame him with such a vicious idea, he should be prepared for his revenge. In just one day, a piece of news spread throughout the Fire Spirit Land. The orchard's manager, Zhu Zheng, and the handyman, Xiong, had stolen the fire spirit fruit. It was confirmed that the two had committed a heinous crime and had been handed over to the Fire Spirit Land's punishment hall to be punished severely as a warning to others. When the handymen heard the news, they couldn't believe it. However, the news was spread by the Chiqiao Land disciples, so they couldn't question it. Everyone knew that Xiong was finished. Zhu Zheng was finished. Stealing the fire spirit fruit was something that hadn't happened for many years. However, what people couldn't understand was that Zhu Zheng was the manager of the orchard. Why would he steal the fire spirit fruit? Besides refining the heaven opening pill, this thing didn't have any other use. What could he do with it? While this news was spreading, another piece of news was also fermenting in secret. Since Zhu Zheng was in trouble, the position of manager of the orchard was vacant. When the time came, there would definitely be someone to replace him. The handymen didn't need to think about it. The only ones who could become managers were the Chiqiao Land disciples. Moreover, although the position of manager of the orchard was very prestigious and had a large number of people under him, it was actually a thankless job. Therefore, the Chiqiao Land disciples who had a little bit of a future didn't put them in their eyes. Only Zhu Zheng, who had been promoted from a handyman and had no future, would scramble for this position. Another 2 days passed. Du Rufeng descended from the sky. When the busy Yang Kai saw this, he hurriedly put down what he was doing and went up to greet him with cupped hands. Master Du. Du Rufeng was full of smiles. He waved his hand and said, "Rise." Yang Kai looked at his expression and was slightly stunned. Master, did something good happen? You're so happy. Du Rufeng smiled. There is something good, but it's not me. It's you.
Me?
Yang Kai's expression changed. It can't be that matter. He thought that it shouldn't be. He was already mentally prepared to be rejected. Look at what this is. As Du Rufeng spoke, he stretched out his hand and a new set of clothes immediately appeared in his hand. Rainbow shirt, that's right. Du Rufeng opened the rainbow shirt. Try it on. But master, isn't this something that only the Chiqiao Land disciples can wear? So, you're already a Chiqiao Land disciple, Du Rufeng said with a smile. Yang Kai immediately revealed a surprised expression. He cupped his hands and said, "Thank you, master, for your promotion." He respectfully received the rainbow shirt with both hands. He didn't need to hide anything and directly put it on. Du Rufeng nodded at the side. Not bad, the size is just right. When you have time, go to the personnel hall to get your disciple token and get a few more sets of clothes. Yes, master. Chapter 3877. He had suddenly become a disciple of the Chiqiao Land. Although the design of the rainbow shirt was nothing special, it was a symbol of status and identity in the Chiqiao Land. If a worker wanted to become a disciple of the Chiqiao Land, The only way was to reach the heaven-opening realm. That was why so many workers had no choice but to refine Grade 1 and Grade 2 materials to reach the heaven-opening realm. The materials needed for Grade 3 heaven-opening realm were too expensive, and workers couldn't afford them at all. If they bit off more than they could chew, they could only spend their lives in the heaven-opening realm. And no matter how many heaven-opening experts there were, the Chichao land did not have to worry about them causing any trouble. As such, they generously washed away their status as workers and gave them the status of ordinary disciples. Not only would this give them a sense of belonging to the Chichao land, it would also increase the Chichao land's strength. With the rainbow shirt on, Yang Kai seemed to understand many things. Seeing him in a daze, Du Rufeng smiled. "You're already so happy? There's still more good things to come." Yang Kai asked curiously, "What other good things?" Du Rufeng smiled slightly. "Did you forget the request you made before? To fulfill that request, you have to at least become a disciple of the Chichao land, so your clothes are only the most basic prerequisite." Yang Kai was shocked. The Venerable agreed. Du Rufeng nodded. He agreed. Without waiting for Yang Kai to say anything, he changed the topic. However, the Venerable raised a condition. "What condition?" Yang Kai asked eagerly, but he was secretly on guard. He knew that the Venerable wouldn't agree so easily. It would be difficult for him to fulfill this condition, but it didn't matter. At the very least, he had achieved his goal. The Venerable said that you haven't been in the fire spirit land for long. This is one thing, and your cultivation isn't high. Even if you've made a contribution, it's not enough to appoint you as the manager of the orchard. You have to know that there are more than 1 or 2 people eyeing this position. If you're appointed rashly, it'll be difficult to convince everyone. Disciple understands. Yang Kai nodded. So, the Venerable wants you to make another contribution. Du Rufeng looked at him with a smile. As long as you can make another great contribution, the Venerable will have a reason to support you. At that time, no one can say anything. Yang Kai scratched his head and said, "This kind of merit also depends on luck. It's not something a disciple can do just because he wants to. Or rather, where else would there be scarlet heaven golden flames in the fire spirit land that a disciple needs to help collect?" Du Rufeng couldn't help but laugh. The red sky golden flame is extremely difficult to nurture, and it's rarely seen in several thousand years. It was already a great fortune to be able to obtain one last time. How could there be a second time? With a solemn expression, he said in a low voice, "Now, there is something I need you to do. As long as you do it well, you will naturally get the credit." Yang Kai came to a realization. So the Venerable One has already made arrangement. He immediately cupped his fists and said, "If that's the case, please tell me, Master. This disciple will leave now and try to return as soon as possible." Du Rufeng patted his shoulder. "You're my brother now that you're wearing these clothes. Don't call me Master anymore. The Venerable One wants junior brother to do this time is to hunt down and kill a traitor." "Traitor?" Yang Kai's expression turned cold. "That's right." Du Rufeng's expression was cold. This person made a big mistake a few days ago, but he didn't repent. Instead, he escaped from the Chichao lands. This is an unforgivable crime. The Venerable One wants you to find him, kill him, and bring back his head. Yang Kai blinked and said somewhat guiltily, "Junior brother should obey the Venerable One's orders, but junior brother still wants to ask, this traitor, what is his cultivation level?" He didn't want to rush out and find out that the traitor was a heaven-opening realm cultivator. If that happened, who knew who would be the one to kill who? Du Rufeng chuckled. "Don't worry, his cultivation level is similar to yours, and he's still injured." Yang Kai nodded. "Then there's no problem. But how do I find him?" "Brother, you know that the outside world is so vast that it's hard to distinguish between north, south, east, and west. It's so vast and boundless, he can just hide in any direction. Someone will go with you. This is just a formality. It's fine as long as you know it in your heart. In fact, you don't need to do much. You can do that." Yang Kai was stunned. However, he quickly reacted and cupped his hands. "Thank you, Venerable One. Thank you, brother, for your promotion." Du Rufeng patted his shoulder. "All right, there's no time to lose. You can leave now." Once you leave the fire spirit land, there will naturally be someone to receive you. Yes. Yang Kai responded and rushed into the sky. After watching Yang Kai leave, Du Rufeng's figure flickered and suddenly disappeared. A moment later, in the main hall of the fire spirit land, Du Rufeng stood in front of the thick door and bowed respectfully. The door opened a crack, and Du Rufeng stepped in. He stood still, and a voice came to his ears. Is it done? Reporting to Venerable, everything has been done. Yes. The Venerable One responded softly, you look like you have some doubts. Du Rufeng smiled bitterly, I can't hide anything from Venerable. Disciple really does have some doubts. Speak. One of Disciple's doubts is that Yang Kai is new here and his cultivation is not high enough. Is it really okay to help him to a higher position? What does it matter? He's just a trivial orchard manager. Even if he is promoted, how long can he stay in this position? At most, it'll only be half a year. Du Rufeng heard this and understood. Brother Yu Lian is about to leave seclusion? Yes. Then there's no problem. Half a year is really nothing. Du Rufeng gently nodded. There's one more thing Disciple doesn't understand. Is it about that traitor? Du Enhai chuckled. It's about that traitor. Du Yu Feng was puzzled. That traitor entered the fire spirit land at the same time as Yang Kai, and his cultivation wasn't high. Although he made a mistake without knowing it, it shouldn't have been a crime worthy of death, so why did he choose to defect and escape? The Seven Openings land is covered by many spirit arrays. If the spirit arrays were not activated, even if he was a heaven opening realm master, he would not have been able to enter and leave freely. If this king had not allowed it, how could he have escaped? Du Rufeng suddenly understood. He had guessed before that a trivial cultivator from the Emperor realm would not be able to escape from the Seven Openings land spirit arrays. Now that he heard Du Enhai say this, he knew his guess was correct. The traitor being able to escape was also the Venerable's intention. It could even be said that the traitor had been provoked by someone. Why is that? Du Rufeng was puzzled by this. That kind of trash, Disciple could have easily dealt with it, why bother letting him out? You don't understand. Du Enhai slowly shook his head, that person is not someone you can kill. This king noticed when he was leading him back. If he really dies at the hands of the Seven Openings land's people, there may be some trouble in the future. Du Rufeng was shocked. The strength of the Seven Openings land was not weak. The Heavenly Monarch and the several Venerables were all mid-rank Heaven Opening Realm Masters, so anyone who could cause trouble for the Seven Openings land would at least be a 5th-rank Heaven Opening Realm Master. Could it be that that person has some kind of backer? As soon as Yang Kai left the orchard, Great General flew down. Yang Kai was already used to this. This guy would only fly over his head when he was in the orchard. Otherwise, he would move on his own. Not caring, Yang Kai continued forward and soon left the fire spirit land. At the exit of the spirit array, 2 figures were waiting. As soon as they saw Yang Kai rush out, the fat man on the left asked, "Is this junior brother Yang Kai?" "It is this brother." Yang Kai stepped forward and cupped his fists. "Greetings, brothers. I've made you wait for a long time." As he spoke, he sized up the 2 of them, inwardly shocked. Originally, when he had heard Du Rufeng say that this was just a formality, he hadn't believed it. After all, ever since he had started cultivating, he had never encountered such a good thing. Now that he saw these 2, he understood that it really was just a formality because these 2 were actually heaven-opening cultivators. Their auras were similar to Zhu Zheng's, so they should be first-rank heaven-opening realm masters. Although he didn't know who the person he was chasing was, Du Rufeng had said that this person's strength was similar to his own. In other words, this person was definitely not in the heaven-opening realm, or even half-step heaven-opening realm. He and 2 other heaven-opening realm masters were chasing an emperor realm master. No matter how he looked at it, it was very strange. While Yang Kai was sizing them up, they were also sizing him up. The fat man who had answered first said, "So you're junior brother Yang. As expected, you're quite handsome and have an extraordinary bearing." The man on the right also nodded. Junior brother Yang has a majestic gait and a majestic aura. With a single glance, I can tell you're someone who will accomplish great things. What's going on? Yang Kai was dumbfounded. These two fellows' flattery was too obvious, making him feel uncomfortable. Moreover, ever since he had come to the Seven Openings land, he hadn't felt anything when interacting with the workers, but when he went to the market and saw the Seven Openings land's disciples, not a single one of them gave him a proper look. Now, there were actually two Heaven Opening Realm masters trying to flatter him. This was really uncomfortable. Thinking about it for a moment, he guessed that it was because of Du Rufeng. He didn't know what Du Rufeng had told these two to make them not hesitate to praise him as soon as they met. What else could Yang Kai say? He could only cup his fists with a smile. Brothers, you're too serious. Your auras are vigorous and your cultivation is profound. This junior brother is far from being able to compare to you. This time, I'll have to ask you two brothers to take care of me. The two looked at each other and smiled, feeling that Yang Kai's attitude was quite good. The fat man immediately said, "Junior brother, don't worry. This time, Brother Du told us that even if something happened to us, we absolutely couldn't let anything happen to junior brother. We two brothers will definitely risk our lives to protect junior brother Yang. I still haven't asked how I should address you two brothers." Yang Kai asked politely, thinking to himself that it was no wonder these two fellows had such an attitude towards him. It turned out that Du Rufeng had told them to do this before. Now that they had said this, they definitely understood that Yang Kai was an extremely important person to Du Rufeng. In the future, he might be able to make a name for himself in the fire spirit region. At this moment, they naturally wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to make friends with him. Perhaps they would be able to soar in the future. The two of them reported their names. The fat one was called Ma Liu and the thin one was called Jiang Sheng. After some small talk, the three of them set off together. Chapter 3878. The Chiqiao land was covered by many spirit arrays, so it was impossible to enter or leave without permission, but since this was Du Enhai's order, naturally he was prepared. Leaving the Chiqiao land, Yang Kai looked back and saw that the Chiqiao land was shrouded in fog, making it impossible to see anything, so he couldn't help feeling a little worried. "Two brothers, we don't know how long this trip will take. Should we remember the way back? It won't be good if we get lost on the way back." Fat Ma Liu smiled. Junior brother may not know this, but in this vast universe, directions are chaotic and topsy-turvy, so it's difficult to remember. However, as long as we have a guide, no matter how far we are, we should be able to find our way back. Yang Kai showed a look of understanding. When Du Enhai led him to the Chiqiao land, he seemed to have heard Du Enhai mention something about a guide, but he had never seen it with his own eyes, so he didn't know what it was. Yang Kai guessed that it was some kind of tracking treasure. "Then how do we find the traitor?" Yang Kai asked again. This time it was Jiang Sheng who answered, "Junior brother Yang, don't worry, we naturally have a way to find him. Junior brother, you just need to follow us two brothers and kill the traitor when the time comes." "I understand, then I'll be relying on the two brothers." Yang Kai cupped his fists and simply ignored them. Although he was curious about many things, asking too many questions would only make him suspicious. Since he didn't need to worry, why bother? Speaking of which, he had been in the Chiqiao land for a few months now and this was the first time he had left. The Chiqiao land was not a good place. Although he was lucky enough to be on Du Rufeng's ship and had won his appreciation, Yang Kai always felt that the other party was up to something. And the cause of all this was after Du Rufeng helped him obtain the Scarlet Heaven Golden Flame. Yang Kai suspected that his wood attribute strength had been exposed, and although he wasn't sure, it was better to be safe than sorry. If there was a chance this time, perhaps he could escape from the Chiqiao land. It was a pity that he hadn't expected Du Rufeng to give him such a mission. Moreover, Du Rufeng didn't give him any time to prepare before urging him to set off. Otherwise, he might have been able to take Old Fang and Dai Yu with him. Ma Liu and Jiang Sheng were both in the Heaven Opening realm, so they were extremely fast. Yang Kai used his full strength but was only barely able to catch up. But even so, the two of them had a whole new level of respect for Yang Kai. They had originally thought that he was just a boy who had been lucky enough to obtain Du Rufeng's appreciation, but who would have thought that he actually had some ability? Half a day later, Ma Liu suddenly stopped. He waved his hand and took out a ball-like object. Inside the ball-like object, there was a red mist that was constantly changing and pointing in a certain direction. Keeping the ball, Ma Liu chased in that direction. Seeing this, Yang Kai understood that this ball-shaped artifact should have a tracking function. Otherwise, in this vast universe, how could the traitor find him after escaping the 7 openings? His heart trembled. Since that traitor had a tracking mark on him, did he have one on him as well? If Du and Hai had secretly used some kind of trick when he brought them back, it would have been difficult for Yang Kai to notice. After all, the gap between their cultivation realms was obvious. Perhaps there really was one. If that was the case, then Yang Kai needed to think about how to escape the 7 openings. If he failed to do so and instead exposed his intentions, being caught would not have a good ending. Flying through the void, in this vast universe, the scenery was breathtaking, and anyone could feel their own insignificance. Without counting the days, Kai Yang estimated that at least 10 days had passed since they left the Chiqiao land. The group of 3 continued on their way, with Ma Liu taking out the round ball from time to look at it and changing directions according to its guidance. As time went by, Ma Liu and Jiang Sheng's expressions gradually turned ugly. At this point, even if Yang Kai didn't want to ask, he had no choice but to do so. 2 brothers, did something go wrong? Ma Liu said, Junior brother Yang, please don't worry, there's nothing wrong. It's just that we're too far from the 7 openings land. In this vast universe, all kinds of dangers are possible. Although we 2 brothers are heaven opening realm cultivators, we're only first-grade heaven opening realm cultivators. If you really encounter danger, we may not be able to protect you. Jiang Sheng cursed, I thought it would be easy to catch up to that bastard, but who knew he would run so fast? I wonder what kind of secret technique he cultivated. Yang Kai understood that the situation had developed somewhat outside of their expectations. The traitor had run too far. Ma Liu said, we have to speed up. If we let him run like this, who knows how long we'll have to chase him. Jiang Sheng nodded, Junior brother Yang, I'll have to apologize. As soon as he finished speaking, he and Ma Liu, one on the left and one on the right of Kai Yang, suddenly increased their speed. After traveling like this for 3 days, Ma Liu's face suddenly lit up. He stopped. He should be recovering from his injuries. Jiang Sheng raised his eyebrows. How much longer? Ma Liu looked at the ball in his hand. Half a day. Jiang Sheng said, Junior brother Yang, make your preparations. When we see that traitor, you'll have to act. We 2 brothers will support you from the side. Thank you for your trouble, brothers. Yang Kai cupped his fists. Ma Liu laughed, of course, of course. I just hope that junior brother won't forget to give us 2 brothers a hand when you soar in the future. I wouldn't dare to hope for that. Yang Kai replied, closing his eyes and adjusting his breathing. He was speechless inside. With Ma Liu and Jiang Sheng riding on his left and right, even if he wanted to run, he wouldn't be able to do so unless he killed these 2 first. However, these 2 were still heaven-opening realm cultivators. Yang Kai knew that if he suddenly attacked and used his full strength, he would be able to kill one of them while they were off guard, but if he killed 2 of them, that would be unrealistic. It seemed that he wouldn't be able to escape from the Chiqiao land for the time being, so he could only take it 1 step at a time. Half a day later, the aura of a universe world suddenly appeared in front of him. Yang Kai opened his eyes and looked over, discovering that it really was a universe world. Looking from a distance, this world was blue and seemed to flow like clouds, making for a beautiful sight. Ma Liu and Jiang Sheng led him straight into this world, passing through layers of clouds and mist. Yang Kai looked around curiously. After all, this was the first universe world he had seen after leaving the star boundary, so he naturally wanted to see if there was anything different about it. Looking around, there didn't seem to be much of a difference, only the world principles were slightly different. Moreover, there didn't seem to be any powerful existences in this universe world, because when the 3 of them entered, there wasn't the slightest obstruction. If there were great emperors here, this definitely wouldn't be the case. Ma Liu and Jiang Sheng let out a sigh of relief. Although they were heaven-opening realm cultivators, if there were great emperors here, they wouldn't be willing to rashly clash with them. Since there weren't any great emperors, that was for the best. Flying through the sky, 3 figures suddenly came to a stop on a large mountain. Ma Liu took a deep breath, his already fat body becoming even more bloated. He then spat out at the mountain below and roared, "Get out here." As he spoke, the mountain range collapsed and the waterfall flowed in reverse. In the wilderness, countless birds and beasts were instantly killed. The earth continued to rise and fall, as if there was an earth dragon roiling underground. With a rumbling sound, the mountain peak collapsed, and a figure scrambled out of it, looking towards the place where Yang Kai and the others were standing in horror. Jiang Sheng sneered, "Bastard, you're quite good at running, making this uncle chase you for so many days." At this moment, the traitor clearly saw the 7 colored robes on Ma Liu and the others, and his expression changed greatly as he turned around to flee. Jiang Sheng's laughter became even colder. "Since this uncle is already here, where do you think you're going?" Spitting out a ring-shaped artifact from his mouth, it instantly sealed off the surrounding area. The traitor tried to flee, but he was unable to escape the range of this secret technique, causing his expression to become even more terrified. "Junior brother Yang, it's up to you." Ma Liu turned to Yang Kai and said, "Don't worry, he's currently injured and definitely isn't your match. Moreover, us 2 brothers will take care of him, so you just have to be bold and attack." Yang Kai nodded, "I understand." Stepping forward, he entered the area sealed off by Jiang Sheng, a complicated expression on his face as he stared at the traitor who had betrayed the Chiqiao land. The traitor struggled for a while but couldn't find a way to leave, so he could only turn his head. Their eyes met and a look of shock appeared on his face. "Yang Kai, why is it you?" Yang Kai let out a long sigh. "That's what I wanted to ask as well." Previously, when Du Rufeng had asked him to hunt down a traitor, he didn't ask who it was. After all, he didn't know many people, but now that he saw this traitor, he realized that he really did know this traitor and that he was someone who had joined the Chiqiao land with him. "Fang Tai. It's all because of you." Fang Tai's eyes were crimson red, as if he was meeting Yang Kai's mortal enemy. "If it weren't for you, this Fang wouldn't have fallen to such a state." Yang Kai snorted, "What does it have to do with me?" This was simply inexplicable. Fang Tai gritted his teeth. "The fire spirit fruit that Zhu Zheng and Xiong Yong conspired to steal is yours, right?" "That's right." Yang Kai nodded, suddenly revealing a look of realization. "I understand, you've been caught in the crossfire." Fang Tai angrily said, "I didn't know anything, it was Zhu Zheng who told me to delay you. He's the manager of the orchard, so how could I not listen? I thought it was just a small matter, who knew that it would involve the theft of the fire spirit fruit." "You didn't have to listen." Yang Kai coldly laughed. "Fate has always been in your own hands." "You're right." Fang Tai exploded. "When Zhu Zheng and Xiong Yong got into trouble, I knew that they would definitely investigate me, so I ran, but I didn't expect that you guys would still catch up to me. What's more, I didn't expect that you would be one of the people chasing after me. What's so strange about that? This matter started with me." Fang Tai didn't understand. "But you're just an errand boy." Yang Kai pinched his collar and adjusted it. Fang Tai's eyes widened. "Rainbow robe, you actually dare to wear the rainbow robe? Are you a disciple of the Chiqiao land? You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.